Well, thank you for council for participating tonight through home, being safe with your families. This is our first time ever in doing something like this. We're gonna run the meeting as close to normal as we possibly can for the citizens that are out there and for the council people. This meeting is recorded, all participants, and everyone is muted at certain times. But during citizen participation, you will be able to talk. Because of the technology and some of our issues that we do have, we will have 2 open sessions for citizens participation, and that will be before item 7, before any council actions. The citizens can comment on any one of those actions that they please, all of them or one of them, and then we'll have our normal citizen participation at the end of the meeting. This way people can go through the system, be put back into the waiting room, and come back towards the end of the meeting for more comments if they have it. Council, we're requesting that you raise your hand. I can see everybody in front of us, or whoever can. It's easier that way to follow everybody. And Michelle will be my wingman here. We'll try to get everything as right as possible with a few interruptions as possible, and we'll go from there. So at this time, I'd like to call to order the Fraser City Council regular but different meeting, virtual meeting for April 9th, 2020 at 7:15 p.m. Can we please stand for the national or Pledge of Allegiance? National
we're going to just do this. Doesn't matter. No.
Hey, and for Ms. Dolan, could you please do roll call?
Okay, here. Here.
Member Lesage?
She's
Here.
muted.
Here.
Member Shornack?
Here.
Member Winowicki?
On video.
Member Carnegie?
Present here. Thank you. And also, council, if you didn't catch on the notes that were sent out, we will be doing a roll call on every vote tonight to make it easier and more precise. At this time, I would need any approval of the agenda, or if there's any amendments, please let me know. Ms. Kolka?
I would like to make a motion to amend the agenda under section 7, request for council action, to add a discussion and potential development of an RFP to hire an independent HR consulting firm to handle city employment business as directed by the city council. And I'd like to add that after subsection E, thus now making it F, and then moving F, which is the discussion of the city manager employment contract, to subsection D.
Second.
Okay, we have the motion and second. Any comments on the motion for other council? All in favor?
Aye. Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Okay, Member Baranski?
Yes.
Member Blanky?
Yes.
Member Kalka?
Yes.
Member Lesage?
Yes.
Member Shornack?
Yes.
Member Winowicki?
Yes.
Mayor Carnegie?
Yes. Motion carries. Any other amendments, add-ons?
I have my hand up.
Councilwoman Shornack.
I just don't know if at this time, because I've been, 2 of the current Parks and Rec Commission members have reached out to me stating that this has not been approved by the group for for the recreation plan for capital improvements for the city parks. And as much as I desperately want our parks to be done, I don't know that at this time, where we don't know how things are gonna fall out, that we should necessarily be moving forward with this project, even though I'm 100% behind it. I don't know with how the COVID is gonna affect our city as a whole, as far as our finances go. I just would like to say that we would own this maybe until we can actually have a actual meeting, until Parks and Recs can actually have a meeting, and that they all kind of get on the same page.
Okay, I'd also like to add too that the presentation also won't take place tonight, because they didn't have anything ready to do it with this type of technology. So there will be no presentation also. So maybe that falls in line with what you're requesting. So all I need you to do is to make a motion.
I am making a motion to remove that from the agenda at this time, to postpone to our next actual physical meeting.
Second.
Maybe.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Kathy Blanky. All in favor, roll call, please.
Member Baranski,
No.
Member Blanky,
Yes.
Member Kalka,
No.
Member Lesage,
Yes.
Member Shornack,
Yes.
Member Winawiki.
I'd have to say no. There's two items on here that I'm not clear on what's being removed. There's 5A and there's also 7D.
I was requesting that we remove both of them currently. So,
So 5A and 5D was part of your motion, correct?
yes.
Yep.
Well, 5A and 7D.
5A and 7D, right.
Mayor, I'm so sorry. I seconded Mrs. Shornack's motion, but I voted against it, correct? Could you repeat the motion? I can't.
I would like to remove presentations 5A and 7D from our agenda this evening. Just because I don't think we're prepared to move forward on this, because I also know that all the Parks and Recs commissioners have not agreed to this particular plan to present to us as well, because two have reached out to us with their concerns.
So they haven't approved anything that come to us anyway.
Okay, so she's asking for it not
To be removed.
to be
To
removed.
remove.
Just,
Yeah.
well, postponed until our next
Postponed.
Having,
physical meeting,
yeah,
which I
hearing.
pray is next month.
So you're good with that motion, Ms. Blanky?
I said yes.
Okay. Okay, can we please do roll call again?
Okay. Member Baranski,
No.
Member Blanky,
To remove it, yes.
Member Kalka,
No.
Member Lesage,
Yes.
Member Shornack,
Yes.
Member Winawiki,
Yes.
and Member Carnegie.
Yes,
Okay, the ayes have it, 5-2.
thank you. So we'll remove that.
Mayor, I hate to interrupt, but I'm frozen. So I cannot even take my thing off of here.
I can hear you perfectly, but you are frozen in.
An HR director.
I can continue. I just can't tell you when I want to say something.
Can you? Okay,
You can just verbally tell
yeah.
us.
Sure.
just say Mike or something. That'd be fine. Okay, at this time, I would need then a motion to approve the agenda as amended if there is not any other changes.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, I'll second that motion. All in favor, roll call vote, please.
Member Baranski,
Yes.
Member Blanky,
Yes.
Member Carnegie,
Yes.
Member Kalka,
Yes.
Member Lesage,
Yes.
Member Shornack,
I said yes.
Yes, okay.
Member Winawiki.
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion approved, agenda as amended. Presentations, at this point, we have one, item B, 20.
Hold on a second, we got no audio going out to people.
Hang on, we just have a technical glitch to fix.
Mike, you look like an airline pilot.
Yeah, I wish I was taking us all to Hawaii right now.
Oh, amen.
Yes.
Or Florida, like some of us are there already.
Can anybody hear us now?
Apparently, the only ones that can hear in the residents or outside is Miss Dolan. Can someone send us a text or a note?
I can hear.
They still cannot hear on the television.
Okay. We are using a different computer than we did yesterday. So Wayne, can you turn that down, please?
You can't hear anything?
Okay, can you hear us now? Out there? Hey, Linda, can you let me know?
1 second, I'm having my daughter check.
I'm gonna give you this. I'm gonna take this.
Well, nobody's talking. Maybe they can't hear, huh?
All right, let's
We'll
get
just,
some audio going back and forth
You're
here.
doing something.
Yep.
How we doing?
Hold on. Oh, there's also nothing on the website or YouTube. Oh,
They're saying when they get to the link, they can't get to it, so I'm gonna try to fix that too, but once we get the audio going, I can remote on a different computer and look at that.
Okay, hold on, let's get the audio. Okay, audio loading frame showed up, but there's echo, but that's because you guys all have your mics on. So we're good on the audio on the television.
Okay, so we're good with audio, we can keep going?
Yep, because we have our,
Yep.
Okay, all right, tell them I'm working on the YouTube as you guys go with the meeting,
okay.
okay?
Yep.
And just make sure everyone turns off their mics to get rid of the echo.
Okay. Item B, 2021 budget. John Walters, the interim finance director. Mr. Walters,
Good evening. Thank you,
good
Mayor.
evening.
Good evening, Council. I'm John Walters. I think I've met most of you a couple months ago at a meeting. I'm here to present the fiscal year 21 budget, which goes from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. I have a PowerPoint presentation with about 9 slides. I'll go through it, and then if anybody's got any questions or anything, just chime in and ask away. The process for the city is for department heads to reach out to the finance department by March 5th with their recommendations for the budget, and then the finance department puts that together for presentation for you. This was actually, although I did meet a couple of department heads, this was actually done with Tim Sadowski when he was still here. So he met with a lot of department heads and put this budget together. I've reviewed the budget with Mr. O'Neill, and we've gone through it. It looks pretty reasonable. Not a lot of change from the prior year. However, some things changed, and we'll go through that as I discuss the budget. So starting with the first slide here, or actually the second slide, this is general fund expenditures. So the recommended budget for 2021 is about $15.5 million. So that's up from last year, about $68,000, just a slight increase. So within this budget is zero set aside for capital outlay. So there's nothing for building improvements, any infrastructure improvements. I will say, let me just take a step back, that we're just talking about the general fund here. So the general fund is the largest fund of the city. Most of the operations of the city run through the general fund, like police and fire, the EPW. Most of the city hall operations run through the general fund, like finance, IT, assessing. So outside of the general fund are streets. We have the major street fund, the local street fund. There's also water and sewer, the library. So those are outside the general fund. Those are standalone funds. We're talking about the general fund, which is the most important fund of the city, and its health is paramount for the city's health. So going back, we have $15.5 million in total expenditures for the year. Capital outlay is zero. Right below that is employee wages. So employee wages are about $5.7 million, which is about 36% total. This is a slight increase from the prior year, and very typical. This is the largest piece of the pie, if you will. The city is basically a service organization, right? So provide services for the residents. So it makes sense that personnel costs are the largest expense for the city. So included in employee wages are also, all payouts. So holiday payouts, vacation payouts, overtime wages. Those are also included in this bucket. Just below that are employee benefits of $870,000. That's about 6% of the total. That's pretty similar to last year as well. Employee benefits are insurance benefits, primarily health insurance, life insurance, any other benefit that an employee might receive. Below that are employer taxes. That's FICA, $427,000 or 3% of the total. That's pretty similar to last year. So those three buckets, the employee wages, the employee benefits, employer taxes, those total about 46% of the total, which is pretty typical for a city. Usually you see about 50% of personnel costs as 50% of total expenditures in the general fund. Kind of moving over to the other side, you see right at the bottom, you see pension. So the pension costs, this is related to the underfunding of the pension plan, and this is an actuarial determined amount. So every year the actuaries put together a valuation for the pension plan, and in that valuation they determine what the following year contribution needs to be to make sure that the pension plan is properly funded. So that's that number. So the current employees actually pay a portion of their check goes towards their pension costs. This covers the current pensioners and future pension costs of the city. So that's at $2.7 million. That's a slight increase from last year, which was $2.6 million. That's 17% of the total. And we have more slides later on that kind of discuss the pension plan in more detail. Above that is retiree health care. So again, included in the employee benefits are health care for current employees.
Although if they raise their hand.
Current employees, those insurance costs are included over in the employee benefits bucket.
You want them to hit the hand or raise their hand?
Is for retirees only. That's about $2 million, and this makes up about $1.8 million of current claims for retirees, and then there's another $207,000 of additional contributions that the city makes into the retiree health care plan. Again, there's a actuarial study evaluation that's done every 2 years on the retiree health care plan. And the actuaries come up with a determined contribution that they say should be made into that retiree healthcare plan to make it fully funded eventually. That number is close to $4.3 million, actually slightly over $4.3 million. And so the city just pays as they go. So, and I do have more slides that discuss retiree healthcare in more detail too. So the pension and the retiree health, those together are about 30% of total expenditures for the general fund. So really, 30% of total expenditures are related to non-current operations, right? It goes towards retirees only. Kind of moving up, you see supplies. Supplies are a very small piece of the pie, just $225,000, 1% of the total. That's very similar to last year. Above that, contracted services. These are services that are performed by contracted employees, so services that are not included in employee wages. So you have assessing contracted out, legal services are contracted out, dispatch services, so things of that nature. Now these services are negotiated every so often, and from what I've seen, it looks like that the city does a good job negotiating those contracts, and they're reviewed periodically. And this number, $2.1 million, is very similar to last year again. It's 14% of the total. Above that is building operations. Building operations are the costs that it takes to run the various buildings that the city owns. So it includes natural gas costs, water, electric, things of that nature. Now this number is a little bit higher than last year, about a couple $100,000. It looks like the percentage is cut off on the graph, but it's about 6% of the total. The increase has to do with a $200,000 budgeted amount for stormwater drainage, so related to the building. So that's an important expenditure. Just above that is vehicles. Most of the city's vehicles are leased, so that's kind of a fixed cost. Also included in that vehicle cost are gasoline, oil changes, other maintenance that's not covered by the lease, and insurance. And that number is very similar to last year. I think it's actually spot on from last year, and it makes up 3% of the total. So total expenditures, again, $15.5 million. Is there any questions on this slide in particular?
Hey, John, I do have one question. Can you hear me?
Sure, yep.
The city spent some money last year on putting all new lighting fixtures into the city and the buildings, and we're expecting some kind of pretty good savings on that. Is there a way that can show up at the difference of our budget? Because I know we're adding, as you said, it's a larger budget this year, but
Yeah.
how do we find our gain?
I think that should be budgeted up in the revenue as other revenue. It could be. I'll have to look to see where that rebate is budgeted, but I would think that would come in as revenue and not necessarily to offset expenditures.
Right. Okay, thank you.
So we have 15.5 million, and then where does that funding come from? You go to the next slide, which are general fund revenues. General fund revenues, we have $17.5 million budgeted. Now, the largest portion of that, obviously, are property tax revenue. Property tax revenue is budgeted to be just over $13 million, 75% of the total. That actually includes a full 9 mills for the special assessment for police and fire. So same as last year. And that 9 mills brings in roughly $4 million, just under $4 million of property tax revenue. I will say that these numbers were put together, obviously, a few weeks ago, right? Or maybe a month ago. And a lot's gone on since then. So in particular, within state grants, there's state shared revenue. And we have budgeted $1.44 million of state shared revenue. That number will most likely need to be revisited. And potentially amended down as we figure out, because a big component of state shared revenue is sales tax that comes in through the state, and then that's filtered down to all the municipalities. Well, the state, because of this COVID-19 crisis, is expecting significant reductions in sales tax money collected, which will in turn result in reductions going down to the cities. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that. We don't know how big the impact's going to be yet, but we'll probably need a budget amendment mid-year to bring that down slightly.
I have a question from Councilwoman Shornack.
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Walters?
Yes.
The amount that you have on there from revenues, the 17,472,822,
Yes,
is any part of that from the PA 33 funds as well?
yes, yes. It actually,
Which specifically is that?
$3.95 million is included, and that's in that property tax number. So the 13.1 million,
Mm-hmm.
that's where that's in. So if you took out the 9 mils, that would be closer to $9 million. It's probably 68-69% of the total if that was removed.
Okay, so in general, are we still over, if we did not, for any reason, enact PA 33 this year, would that leave us with a shortfall of over 2 million again?
Yes, yeah.
Do you have those numbers by chance, the exact numbers, or no?
It would be pretty close to $2 million. I don't have the exact dollar, but it would be, it's $3.9 million is $3.95 million is the full 9 mils. So if you take that away,
Yep.
we're looking at a $2 million deficit. And I have a slide, the next slide will kind of explain it a little bit more clearer, I think.
Okay, thank you.
And then just moving on, the state grant also included in that number. So you have 1.44 million budgeted for state shared revenue, which we think might go down. Also included in that number is a reimbursement from the state for lost personal property taxes. So a number of years ago, if you remember, the state started repealing personal property taxes for industrial property. So that's a phase out that goes, it's fully phased out in 2023. So we're kind of in the middle of that. But as a result of that legislation, the state has promised to reimburse cities for their lost revenue. So that's kind of the difference between the 2.2 million that you see and the 1.4 in state shared revenue in that state grant number. Just above that, you'll see charges for services at about $1 million, $1 million or 6%. So that's charges to residents and non-residents for various services like recreation programs. I believe the public safety charges for runs that they may have outside of the city for non-residents. Anything that's not covered by property taxes for residents, those are, services that the city provides outside of property that's covered by property taxes are included in this bucket. And that's very similar to last year. That number hasn't gone up or down. Above that, we have penal fines. That's money coming in from the district court for fines and tickets. So this is just the amount that is related to the general fund. So a lot of fines go to the state, various other agencies, but this is what's expected to go to City of Fraser's general fund. And that's about similar to last year, about 3% of the total number. We're not expecting that to change much. Above that, you have administrative services charged to other funds. So, like I said, the general fund has finance and has IT and has HR, and the other funds such as water and sewer, they still need those services. They need finance, they need HR, they need IT. However, they don't go out and get their own staff to do that. They rely on the general fund. and the general fund bills the other funds for their services. And that number is similar to last year. It's always about a little over $400,000, 2% of the total. And then lastly, you have other. And other, the main component of that is interest income. That's another one that we'll probably need to keep an eye on and may need to be amended down because of interest rates, right? So interest rates have dropped significantly over the last couple of weeks, just in hopes to recharge the economy. We don't know if they're going to go back up after this COVID-19 or not. It's just something to look at. I think we have about $140,000 budgeted for interest income. In 2019, the city made about $160,000 in interest income. So it is budgeted a little bit lower, and there's more cash invested. So 140 could be a safe number. We'll just kind of keep an eye on it. But in total, we have $17.5 million, which on the next slide, you'll see a total that shows revenues over expenditures. So total revenue at 17.5 less total expenditures at 15.5 gives you a net increase of fund balance of $2 million. Now, I think the estimated fund balance at the end of 2020 is right around $6 million. Should be a little bit over $6 million. So you add the 2 million to that, you're right around $8 million. There's a small portion that's assigned, but most of it is unassigned. Now, a healthy fund balance is supposed to be between 20 and 25% of annual expenditures. So if you look at the annual expenditures of 15.5 million and you multiply that by 20%, you're right around 3 million. Multiply it by 25%, you're at 3.8. So anywhere between 3 and 3.8 is a healthy fund balance. As you can see, the 8 million far exceeds that. However, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I think given the current circumstances with COVID-19 and there's so many unknowns, I mean, if things really go south, it could start impacting the property taxes, right? Property values could drop, and then now you're looking at
Try to run 3 screens. This one.
that could be a big problem. And then the other thing is the census, right? So the PA 33 is contingent on population. So if you're under 15,000 in population, you can assess the special assessment for police and fire. And this is a census year, so if that number is higher than 15,000, then that goes away. So my recommendation would be to keep the 9 mils this year just to see where things are. And if the city falls below the 15,000 again, now you can play with the number and lower those taxes. And who knows what happens with COVID-19? We'll see how that goes too. But it's better to be kind of safe than sorry. And keep in mind, there's nothing set aside for any capital outlay too in this budget. So if there's capital needs that need to be addressed and included in this budget, that would raise up expenditures and decrease the net increase for the year. So
I have another question from Councilwoman Shornack.
Sure, go right ahead. I think you're on mute.
You're on mute, Patrice.
Hold on, there we go. So you're already talking about amendments to the budget. I know I work for a financial industry, and so I know that, like, for us, I know the auditors have sent things to us indicating that, the normal rules will not apply this year or to this time period. Do you feel that the state is going to do the same thing? Because when we get our audit, obviously, every time we have to do a budget amendment, it raises a red flag with our auditors. So if it's based on the COVID situation, I mean, have you heard anything in your industry that says, like, hey, we're going to give you a little leeway this year because of the dynamics that we're unaware of at this time, how they're going to shake down?
Well, I know that there's funding available. There's funding available for every city, but it's right now it runs through CCD.
It's got 3 screens open.
And there's a lot of strings that are attached to it. So the jury's still out. I mean, it basically reimburses a city for, you know, providing equipment and opening up the small hospitals to help people and things of that nature. So I don't know if that's really going to apply for the city, but I have heard that there is more funding coming that could help with payroll for cities. I think, and I've talked to the folks at Plant Moran who are keeping me abreast of what's coming down the pipeline related to that. I really don't know anything beyond that, but that's another thing that would be considered. So my recommendation would be not to do a budget amendment until December.
Well, obviously, until we need to. That
Right,
really wasn't where I was going with that. It was just more or less, have you heard anything industry-wise, whether or not it's going to be, if you will, a demerit on the audit?
No. I don't think it will have anything to do with the audit at all. I mean, if everybody amends, this is going to be a crazy year for everybody.
Right, that was my point.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to have any bad marks on the audit whatsoever.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. The next slide after that is, this is a slide from last year, which I thought was pretty helpful. It kind of showed right at the top, you can see residential taxable values, you know, a minimum residential taxable value compared to the median, the mean, which is the average, or the maximum property. And then down in the middle, you can see the millage, you know, 1 mil equals 425,000. Now that's last year's numbers. This year it's more like 435. So these numbers are slightly higher this year. But this kind of gives a good idea of, you know, at what millage rate does it bring in, you know, brings in what kind of revenue, and then how much does it cost the average taxpayer. So I think this is a good slide for the residents and for council.
They can't see this, can they?
Nope.
You guys aren't seeing this?
Any questions on this one?
Jack, you just pause for 5 minutes.
Yeah, give us a minute here. I got like no screens up.
No problem.
Everybody please stand by.
Why is this up and not?
They're not seeing it on the TV either.
No.
And for the record, we lost Councilman Coca.
Oh, she's not here. And we lost our page.
She says she's trying to join you again.
All right, tell her I'm trying to get to her.
Okay. Well, the good news is the mic's working on the TV. We're working it out, people.
Everything worked so well yesterday, and now it's not working today.
Patience.
I cannot see her. Well, I'm going to just admit everybody there. And whoever's not supposed to be there is going to get moved back into the waiting room. Sorry, but people. There she is. I just admitted her. Okay, so now
Okay, that's back.
Here we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
yes, we can.
Okay, I'm back.
Yay!
Awesome.
Now don't move.
I know, right? Are we taking a break?
Oh, at this time, is there any other questions at this point for John? Otherwise, I'll have him continue.
I have questions. This is
Go ahead,
Amy.
Amy.
Okay, are we back on the meeting or?
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to circle back a little bit because a lot of this is, you know, old. And I just wanted to get a clarification when you had said about the 8 million fund balance. I
Correct.
forget the exact number. So that came from the 1.95 surplus from PA 33 if we implemented 9 mills this coming year, correct?
That's 3.95, yep.
Well, but we need 2 million of it to balance the budget.
Right, okay,
So when you
That's
talk
fine.
about a surplus,
yep.
okay, so follow me. So, because I'm trying to figure out how we get to 8 million.
The beginning fund balance is 6, right? So at the end of 2020, we're at 6. So that's why, that's how you get to 8.
We have a fund balance now of 6
Yes,
right now,
yep.
okay? In unallocated money?
Unassigned fund balance.
Okay, so I thought we went over this at the last meeting, and I thought we had our 25% plus 1.6, and then we allocated or assigned, whatever financial term you want to use, we assigned the 1.6 to capital improvements to keep us at 25%,
All
right?
Yes, if there's, okay, I wasn't aware of the 1.6 million being assigned for capital improvements. I didn't know if that was approved or not, but if that's the case, then you would have to subtract that off of the 8 million.
Okay, so we're gonna, assuming we don't do PA 33, we would only start with a fund balance of 25% of this year's, right? Which is what
Right.
amount? Can you tell me what that is?
It would be about $3 million.
Okay, and the reason, and John, I know you're coming late to the game, but we keep hearing numbers tossed out, and when residents and employees and people hear $8 million fund balance, and then we don't spend any money, we look like we're hurting it. And this is pre-COVID-19 issues.
Right.
So I want to make sure that when we're presenting data, and I don't blame you by any means, because I know you came into this late in the game, and you know, you're doing the bare minimum, but you're doing your job, you know, but you're not living this full-time yet. So I just want to make sure that the residents understand before PA 33 is implemented, when we end this year, we have $3 million left, and that's what is recommended, a 25% fund balance for any business, any municipality that operates. Is that a fair assessment of what I've said?
Between 20 and 25%, yeah.
Okay. We had just been told by our former finance director 25%. So obviously there's some subjectivity to that 25%. So that then if we did do PA 33 at 9 mills, our fund balance for the year would only be 4.95 million, correct?
The ending fund balance for the total fund balance at the end of 2021 should be 8 million.
Nope. Where do we get 8 million?
Well, if you did the full 9 mills, you would
Yep.
have 17.5 million of revenue,
right?
15.5 in expenditures, which would equal an increase of 2 million. Right now, at the end of June, you're going to have 6 million in total fund balance. Now, that doesn't include the 1.6 that you've assigned for capital improvements. That's the total fund balance would be $6 million.
Okay, that's where I'm at a loss. Where are we getting 6 million from? We just established that we were going to have 3 million. Does this new budget build in another 25%? In other words, another 3 million?
No.
So where are we getting 6 million if we're ending the year with 3 million? And then we're going to add another 2 million with PA 33. Where are we getting to 8? Where am I'm missing 3 million somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know how. I guess I don't know where we're ending with 3 million.
That's the 25% fund balance that we have been on target and have maintained
That's the
through
recommendation,
the
yes.
last meeting that we had, the last general meeting we had, and we made it crystal clear that that was to be our goal because, and thank heavens we did in light of this pandemic, that's fiscally prudent to maintain 25%. So we took the 1.6 million that was above that, put it into capital expenditures. So the goal was, assuming no catastrophes, obviously that's subject to change, we were going to end the fiscal year with $3 million in the bank. Am I correct, council? And
That
so,
was what we were voting on last time.
yeah, so that was the math that we all operated on. That was, and you weren't at the meeting, and we did ask for you to be there. You weren't there. That's not your fault. But that was what was represented to us after conversation with you by the city manager. So when I do the math, I only get to 5 million. I don't see 8. And so I guess, and we can talk about that later, but I just want to make sure the residents understand the data we're given and what our objective is not to have $8 million sitting in the bank while we're taxing them such that it looks arbitrary and capricious. So that's my first thing. And I'll let you like sort that out later. The second thing, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, and I know you had more slides, but given kind of where we're at, because we're going to obviously have specific meetings about the budget, I'm hoping to kind of truncate a little bit of this. You would agree that we would probably be prudent to readjust some assumptions that are made in this budget, particularly those dealing with revenue, state revenue sharing, and other revenue sources that we are relying upon in terms of our predictions for our budget, correct?
Correct.
So what I would like to see is that you would, or whoever, I guess you, modify this to take into account COVID-19. I also want to see personally a budget that starts with 0 mills. So the residents can see under COVID-19, the change in society that we've had, the decreased tax revenues, the decreased state sharing, what a budget with 0 mills looks like. So then they know what we are going to have to decide upon if we choose to not implement the mills or if we choose to implement the mills. Because I don't think starting from 9 mills is fair to the residents, and I don't think it's realistic this budget at all given COVID-19. So that's just my points. Thank you.
Any other questions at this time, or John? Okay, John.
Yes, I'll continue. We will, I can do another version of this budget, but just to kind of revisit the fund balance situation. So if you look at your financial statements from last year, fiscal 19, the ending fund balance in the financial statements are $6.7 million. That's the ending fund balance in the general fund. The amended budget for fiscal 20 is amended to lose $650,000. So it's going to bring the fund balance down to $6 million in the general fund. If there's 1.6 million that's been set aside for capital improvements, that means that there's an unassigned fund balance of roughly $4.5 million, $4.4 million.
What slide are you looking at, John? I'm sorry.
I'm just kind of responding to what you said. That's
No,
all.
right, so we can see the visual. You told us to look at a visual, but it's not on the screen.
No, I was talking about the audited financial statements.
Oh, okay.
We could talk about this later. I don't have a slide on the audit, but we could talk about this offline. But I just wanted to clarify the fund balance situation where it's more 6 million, not 3. That's
Got it. No, that's a big difference.
no, I know.
We need to know that. Like, if you're correct, and I'm not saying you're not, if we have $6 million in the bank right now, I'm a hard no on any PA 33, and I have a feeling the vast majority of my council members are. To this date, we've never been told that as a certainty. So I'm a little pissed if that's true.
The auditor gave the audit that the ending fund balance is $6.7 million at June 30th, 2019. $6.7 million.
On,
Six- June 30th.
That's 19. That's 2019.
That was the ending fund balance, 6.7 million.
is that after PA 33 was implemented for the upcoming year? Did that already include the summer taxes?
Yes, no, that wouldn't include the summer taxes collected in 19. The ending balance at 6/30/19 was $6.7 million, according to the audit.
Okay.
So there's $650,000 deficit budgeted for this year. That would bring the fund balance down to $6 million.
Got it. I
That's
hear you, and we'll obviously chat more to have it
Okay.
crystal clear for the residents on a slide, certain numbers. And I may be behind the eight ball because I am newest to council, so I apologize if I'm on the learning curve still. Thank you.
no problem. No problem.
John, if I can jump in real quick.
Sure.
That information was all presented to the city council and exhibits, and I will dig all those exhibits up. There seems to be some confusion over what the fund balance actually was, assigned, unassigned, of what 25% would be. I'll get all those exhibits. We can resend those out to the city council. But the audited financial statements as of June 30th, 2019 was $6.5 million, 6.7 million, and that's always been the number. So I'll get that up for the mayor and council.
And I just ask that, John, you look at, as I know you did, the video that Tim did in December, as well as all expenditures that were done by council, and put it together, your assessment of the money, so that we have it, please.
Right, and I've taken into consideration the budget amendment that was done in December with the construction for Fruhoff Street, as well as I think there was an $800,000 additional contribution into the MERS pension plan. So that is taking it into consideration with these numbers. But PA 33 could go away anyway, right? Next year with, if the population goes over 15,000 people, which means, with expenditures at $15.5 million, revenues would be at $13.5 million. And, that $8 million fund balance would be gone in 4 years, which is probably, you'd have to really restructure the operations to get expenditures down $2 million a year. So that's all I'm saying is, because of all the uncertainty, it's healthy to err on the side of caution, but that's just my recommendation. I'll move on to the next slide, which covers the pension plan and pension funding. So this kind of gets, so like I said, every year there's a valuation done on the pension plan. This kind of shows the results from 2014 through 2018. 2018 is actually the latest information from the last valuation that was done. And you could see the actuarial liability is about $61.8 million, $61.9 million. That's the total amount that's due if everybody were to be paid out for their pension, all the current employees were to be paid out for their pension, and then it compares it to what kind of assets are on hand. And there's just over $32 million of assets in the plan. So the percent funded is 52%. To get that plan, obviously the goal is to get to 100%. To get to 100% funded, would roughly need a infusion of about $29.8 million to get that up to 100%. Now the actuaries, they come up with a required contribution for the city. They indicated is $2.7 million, which we had in the budget. You saw that in the expenditure slide. That is the actuarial required contribution, also known as the ARC. So that is what the city needs to contribute, and next year there's going to be a different number. Every year we get the amount that needs to be contributed. The next slide shows some assumptions that the MERS board uses when they value their plan. So they use so if you look at the blue line, this is, so on the left, you see employer contribution. So that's the annual contribution. And the blue line right now in 2020, you can see is at about $2.7 million, the number we discussed. You can see that number kind of goes up every year. And that is based on a 7.75% annual return on investment. Now that number may seem high. I think in 2018, the plan lost about 3.5 million, or 3.5%. So it was a negative 3.5%. However, in 2019, the plan had a return of 14.14%. So actually, if you look back, I think MERS looks back over a large span of 35 years, and the return on investment is just under 9%. Now, obviously, markets have plummeted over the last month. 2020 is going to be a terrible year for the plan. We're not going to see that in the actuarial valuation because they're working on 19 right now. So the next value that comes out is not going to reflect that number. It's going to be the valuation that comes out next summer in 21. I don't know that it's going to impact the interest rate, the long-term interest rate that they use. I think they're going to probably stick with 1.75, because if you lower that interest rate and you look at the purple dotted line, the purple dotted line represents, if they were to use say a 5.75 interest rate, it adds $1 million of employer contribution that the city would have to pony up to get that plan to the proper funded level. And that's $1 million difference today. But if you look out in 2040, 2040, you're at 5.5 million compared to 7.5 million. So it's kind of, the interest combines or it gets larger every year. So it's just something to keep in mind. Any questions on the pension plan and some of that I just went over? No. The next slide shows the retiree healthcare plan and compares at the top. You can see the actuaries come up with a actuarial determined contribution. Now this isn't a required contribution, it's a determined contribution that says, hey, we think you should contribute $4.3 million a year. And if you do that every year, your plan will eventually become at the correct funding level that it needs to be, right? The city opts to pay retiree claims as they come due. So if a retiree submits a claim for health care, the city pays that and nothing more, except for there's additional $207,000 that the city now pays because of the low funding ratio. And we'll get, the next slide kind of covers that. But you can see at the bottom, the actuarial accrued liability is 39 million, 39.1 million. So that's what the actuaries say that the city will have to pony up for future retiree healthcare costs. And you can see the plan assets are zero. Now these numbers are stale because it's as of June 30th, 2017, but that's, the actuarial reports for the healthcare come out every 2 years. So this is the latest number that we have. The plan assets now should be close to about 600,000, maybe a little bit more, because he has been putting forth $207,000 additional to help fund this plan. And the next slide kind of shows Public Act 202 of 2017. So the legislation made they have a requirement where pension plans, the state wants pension plans to be funded at 60% and retiree healthcare plans to be funded at 40%. And if you're not at that level, you have to come up with a plan. What's your corrective action steps to get to that level? And the city talked with the actuaries, and the actuaries said, look, if you make an additional contribution of $207,000 every year for 30 years, at the end of 30 years, you should be at 40% with compounding interest and that. So that's our plan. It's accepted by the state, and we're going to continue to move forward with that plan. Is there any questions on the retiree healthcare?
John,
Yes.
if I may jump in, Mayor, if I may jump in real quick.
Hey, you gotta use a mic, it's double feedback.
Okay, I'm walking away so I don't double feedback. John, I believe where some of the difficulty with reference to the 25% fund balance, if you recall, I believe it was at the last meeting or the meeting before that, I think it was the last meeting where we put together that $1.6 million they were going to assign for future capital needs. And Tim is the only person I've ever met that does a 25% on the cash side, what a true cash fund balance would be. And he was basing his 25% on $17.5 million in revenues. So 25% of that would be about $4.4 million. And if you had a $6 million fund balance, 1.6, 25% would be 4.4. So you had a $600,000 loss that he had in the budget. So that's how you get from the 6.7 million down to 6 million. And then 25% of that is 4.37 million. And if you add 1.6 to that, that's how you get to the 6 million. And therein lies where the problem is with the numbers. Now, if you take 25% of 15 million, now you're looking at $3.85 million. So it's a philosophy of, are you doing it on your expenditures or your revenues? And I think that's where the problem is. And I'll just end it there, but I'll get the exhibits up for the mayor and council.
Okay. Yeah, the common practice is usually it bases on expenditures, yeah, and I didn't know that. I know that it was presented. This 1.6 million was presented to council for assignment, but I didn't think that it was actually assigned, and that's why for the slide I just left it. You know, total fund balance is going to be roughly 8 million. Now, if 1.6 of that is assigned, now, you know, there's 6.6 million will be unassigned. So still you're looking at a healthy fund balance either way. So we'll leave it at that. And then, you know, if there's any questions or any clarification needed, I can always circle back. But that concludes the presentation. I think in your packet you have a letter that outlines some of the assumptions that were used for the various accounts and some of the rates. You also have the full budget, which includes a line-by-line budget for the general fund and also all the other funds of the city. So, and that would show, I think, 2018 activity, 2019 activity. Those are audited numbers. It would also show the 2020 budget, the 2020 amended, the 2020 original, and the 2020 amended budget, and then the draft 2021 budget that we just went through. Any other questions that I can?
Council, I can see everybody. Councilwoman Baranski.
Yeah, I don't have a question for Mr. Walters. Thank you for that presentation. I guess I have a question either for, I'm not sure who. Do we do we need a motion do I need to make a motion to get I'm gonna make a motion and you tell me if I'm wrong. I wanna make a motion to have Mr. Walters prepare a budget that assumes 0 mills, and as part of that process gives us a clear direction exactly where we're at on fund balance. When I do the math with what our city managers just said, that's only $500,000, 3.85 to 4.4. I don't really care whether you do it on 25% cash reserves or on whatever, as long as you tell us what you're basing it on. But I just really want to make sure we, our residents and our employees understand what 0 looks like, what our fund balance truly is as of April 9th, 2020, and therefore what we would do by adding mills going forward. And then also the final part of that is re-evaluating some assumptions that are in this budget, as we discussed about state revenue sharing and things like that, being a little bit probably more fiscally conservative in light of COVID-19, if that is my long-winded motion.
I think the direction is fine enough. I don't know if council needs a motion at this time for that, but you give it specific direction, and that should be good as long as John's good with it, understands it.
Yeah, I just didn't want to speak just for myself, so.
Well, I agree. It's part of the question, and we get to answer this year with the new budget. So, John, are you good with the information she's requested?
Yep, I'm clear, and I can put that together and discuss with Wayne how to distribute that to the council.
It's like going back a couple of years ago, is we want real numbers, exact numbers, no assumptions.
Yeah.
Anybody else from council?
Can I just ask one other question, just because this is my first budget session? Then at the next meeting is when we ask specific questions about line items within the budget, correct? Okay, then I'm all set, thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, I see none. Thank you, John, for your time and your presentation, and we'll be talking to you in a couple of days.
Thank you.
Item 6, consent agenda. Councilwoman Blanky?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda as written.
Second.
We have a motion by Blanky, second by Ms. Palka. All in favor, roll call, vote, please.
Thank you. Member Blanky?
Aye.
Member Kalka?
Yes.
Member Lesage?
He's muted.
Yes. I hit the button. It didn't work.
Member Shornack?
Yes.
Member Winawicki?
Yes.
Member Carnegie?
Yes.
Member Baranski?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Going on to item 7. I do have a question for Mr. Walter, the city manager. I'm sorry I'm getting double feedback if I hesitate a little bit. When we're setting public hearings and dates, and if there's a mandate still in process by the state, and we cannot have any public meetings and need people who are willing to be present for, how do we go forward with that?
If you want me to go first.
Yes.
The governor has allowed for public hearing meetings through virtual productions like this to the extent they're feasible. The governor has not yet, to my knowledge, done anything to extend any budgeting deadline because our fiscal year still ends on September. So we can potentially put together budget hearings virtually. We have no opportunity to do that in person, at least until May.
How about the public hearings for the citizens to come forward, speak just on those type of items? Same thing?
It's hard to hear you, Mike, but I think you asked, what about for the residents to come forward and present? If that was your question, then that would have to be done virtually unless we do it in May.
Thank you.
Are there any extensions that we can apply for?
There's nothing, the governor hasn't addressed any of that yet, Mr. Winwicki, at this time. I'm sure it's something that's being looked at, but because of the progressive steps that she continues to take, I suspect that isn't on her priority list yet. As we get closer to the middle and end of this month, that will start to become a more pressing question, I think.
Can we set a tentative date? And I realize it has to be in print, but can we like put a disclaimer on the bottom, provided we're able to meet in public, like, and we can just set a special meeting for the first week of May? Is that
That's
possible?
what I was trying to lean to, if we can do that in May. And maybe some of the restrictions would be lifted. We can actually have maybe a public meeting.
When do we have to have this done by? Maybe if we could clarify the timeline.
You have to have the budget approved by the third Monday in May.
So we have to have the public hearing before we approve the budget, correct?
Yeah, correct.
So the last realistic
You-
day we could
you
have
could
a
have a-
public hearing would be the end of the second week in May.
You could have the public hearing at the council meeting in May before you adopt the budget.
Got it.
You just have to have a public hearing prior to adopting the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else questions? Okay,
Oh, I have another question. How long do we have to give notice? So in other words,
10 days. 10
So-
days.
and we have, as of right now, we still have a special meeting set for April 23rd, correct?
That's correct.
And so obviously we know now what the status is until the end of April. And then our meeting in May is May,
14th.
and we have to have the budget done the week after that. Is that correct?
The third Monday by then.
So the 25th? No, the third Monday in May is actually May 18th.
That would be the following Monday.
That's correct.
The following Monday is the 25th, which is the holiday. So would it be the 26th then?
No, the 18th.
18.
18, yeah.
So our budget has to be in, oh, I'm sorry, you said our meeting was the 14th?
Yes.
Okay. And the consequences if we don't have the budget done are, as of right now, understanding that we may get waivers from the governor because all municipalities are going through this exact same situation in terms of getting a budget done, I'm assuming. What are the consequences, Wayne, just so the residents know?
Well, I defer to Don on that.
Okay.
I mean, we violate the charter, but, you know, I don't know if anybody's going to come arrest us.
Yes, we would be disregarding the will of the people from many, many, many years ago. I don't know if the people today would have that same will. If we did go past that deadline, as long as we did it through an invocation of emergency powers, I haven't looked at this issue, but I think I'd be confident that we could go beyond that deadline by some sort of emergency, either declaration, resolution, or even executive order if we had to.
And as of right now, our emergency powers are through June, is that correct?
Yeah, 90 days.
Our state of emergency, right? Not our powers always exist, regardless.
Our state of emergency, the whole
Yeah.
basis under which we would say,
Yep.
because of this is why we didn't do the meeting and therefore why our budget's late.
Right.
So do we make a motion now or are we gonna have a presentation? I mean, I would like to make a motion to,
It's part of the discussion going forward, Amy, so we can talk about it when we get that. Look.
We can discuss that on the 23rd, setting the date, can't we?
right,
I
You
would say,
just have to have it.
I
We
was
have a
just-
notice requirement for the paper and everything, so that's all.
Well, right, but on the 23rd, we have plenty of time still, and I think we'll have a better understanding of where the governor's going with the lockdown and stuff like that, and if, the COVID is being reduced in cases and so on and so forth, that they're gonna lighten up on the whole stay home, stay safe thing. I think we'll have a better understanding by the 23rd, and that gives us plenty of time to set that meeting. So, for the people.
Mhm. So do we table this till the 23rd? Don? Is that the right lingo?
I don't know. Is there anything? There's really nothing to table at this point because I don't think there's anything before us at this point other than a general discussion about the budget process, right?
Like, we're just talking about setting public hearings.
You're talking about tabling the date, the setting of the date.
Tabling the discussion about setting the hearing. Tabling the whole agenda item.
Yeah, that'd be fine. You could postpone, not table. You could postpone.
Okay.
To,
Postpone.
to the April 23rd meeting. Sure.
Okay.
So
So I'd make. Go ahead, Suzanne. Sorry.
No, I didn't know you weren't done.
I'm done. I'm just trying to speed it up.
So would the purpose of moving this out be because we're waiting for more information, obviously, from the finance director? And because we would like to have these hearings in person?
Yes,
So that
and because of the restrictions by the government.
Yes, agreed.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Mayor.
Yes, and because of the restrictions by the government of not meeting.
Right, okay. I just want to make sure I'm clear on that. I just want to try to get as much business done as we can within the time frame.
I was on a call today with the governor's people, and there was a lot of pushback. It was being talked about extending it to mid-May, and there was a lot of kickback of not doing that. So at this point, she extended it to the April 30th.
Okay, so maybe we can talk about it then at the April 23rd meeting. Maybe we can actually have that information we need from the finance director
right
at the April 23rd meeting, so we can actually have a more productive discussion and set the public hearing at that time.
And the 23rd, I think, is an ideal day. It gives us time to work on the budget, understand what's going on in the state of Michigan, and going forward, picking some good dates that's going to work with everybody.
I think that we should be considering A, B, and C all together and resetting all those public hearings on the 23rd. And then we can discuss them at that time to postpone those three things.
I think it'd be great. I'd like to hear from the people, and I'm sure you guys would too.
Okay.
Well, I would make a motion then to postpone A, B, and C of 7, A, B, and C to the 23rd of April, when we have a better handle on what's going to happen.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments and questions on that motion? Okay, all in favor, I need a roll call vote, please.
All right, wonderful. Member Colco?
Yes.
Member Lesage?
Yes.
Member Shornack?
Yes.
Member Winawicki?
Yes.
Member Carnegie?
Yes.
Member Baranski?
Yes.
Member Blanky?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Postponed.
Carries. Thank you.
Kelly, if you can just make sure postpone to a date certain, the 23rd, that would be awesome.
423.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ready for okay, we're going to start with item 7. This is the citizen participation on items related to items 7, 8 through G. If anyone in the audience would like to comment,
Here, did we do the amended F? I'm having a hard time hearing you. I apologize. I think that would be next is item 7F.
No, we got to do E first, the sidewalk.
yeah, we're just doing
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time hearing. I apologize.
Yeah. Anybody from the audience would like to comment, Michelle?
So if any of the audience would like to participate or speak, if they could just raise their hand. I have everybody in here right now. Okay, I see no hands raised.
Show that Michelle does not recognize any hands raised from anybody's logged on from the audience. At this time, it would be 7, consideration of sidewalk replacement bids. Mr. O'Neill?
I hear crickets.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I have to walk out in the hall because I'm buzzing through and I don't have the information in front of me, but when you're talking about the sidewalk bids, we received the bids and we've got a good bid on that. But by way of background on that, we are required under Public Act 51, which is the act that sets up the just a minute.
Wayne, if I could, I do have the information if you need it.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So what Mr. O'Neill is getting ready to say, by state law, we are required to spend at least $50,000 in sidewalk improvements each year. We did take bids and we received five bids coming in for this project, which would be sidewalk improvements in Venetian Village. And Mattioli Concrete was the low bid at $77,527. Inside that bid also is the Fire Bay Approach that is in this year's capital that we budgeted $60,000 for. And Mattioli Concrete also came in low bid at $41,350.50, bringing their total bid to $118,377.50, being a low bid for both projects. With this project, we would go after sidewalk lifts due to trees inside Venetian Village. With this number in these bids, we would be able to do the entire sub inside of Venetian Village, roughly about 155 sidewalk lifts due to trees. At that point, we'd remove the sidewalk, cut back the roots, put protection on the roots, a special spray as far as for not damaging the tree and its longevity and its life. Pour the sidewalk and remove those trip hazards. With each tree removal lift, it's about 3 to 4 flags of sidewalk would get pulled out and put back in. So as far as the discussion tonight, is to possibly discuss and approve the bid for the amount of $118,877.50 for Mattioli Concrete Company. And that would be for this year's budget, this year's Act 51, and for the capital improvement for the Fire Bay Approach that is already budgeted in this year's budget.
You actually budgeted $60,000 for that project, right?
Correct. So we came well under that number. Also inside that, we're going to see if we possibly can incorporate the Garfield approach also. So we're going to, see the cost and would be to have Mattioli's possibly also do the Garfield approach coming into City Hall also.
Councilman Wojcicki.
Yes. So 2 questions. One, how firm is this bid based on the COVID? And that, Nick, that's for you, because a lot of things are changing now because of COVID. All these people have been laid off. Do they have enough people to do this? Second follow-up question would be for Don. Don, does this fall under essential work to be done under the governor's new orders?
If we're moving papers around, go ahead, I'm sorry.
If I could go first, Mattioli Cement Company did assure us that they are staffed well enough to do this project if it does move forward, depending obviously the circumstances with the state shutdown and when it possibly could be released, and if this does fall under essential or critical work. But that does, they are comfortable with the staffing and employees as far as being able to do the project.
And to the second question, Mr. Wojcicki, if I could, as far as critical infrastructure goes, this might qualify. I would want to double check, but because the governor is very proactive in supporting people being out and recreating because there's nothing else for them to be allowed to do right now. This is the kind of thing that I think the governor would support getting done because it facilitates people walking, biking, and being able to be out in public without getting injured by walking in the street or on defective sidewalks, grass ways, muddy ways, etc. So it might qualify. It's not a question I've seen brought up yet, and we would have to look at it, but I think it might.
Councilwoman Shornack?
You're muted,
Okay,
Patrice.
yeah, no, I know. I was unmuting myself. So I had a question with regards to, Nick, this does not include the sidewalk that we just mud jacked last year, right? Because I know you
No,
guys.
absolutely not. No.
Okay,
We
just wanted
strictly,
to
yep, no, good question. We're strictly going after anybody that lives in those subs, even Venetian Woods. We have a lot of trees that have
Oh, no, I
lifted and
know.
moved the sidewalk. So this
I
is a
know.
great program, and it's going to follow itself year after year.
Councilwoman Amy Baranski?
So Nick, because you were a little bit muffled, so I don't know if all the residents heard.
Sure, sorry about that.
No. And it's technology. We will eventually figure it out, and then we'll be off. Stay home, stay safe. But I want to make sure that I understood right and they understood right. As of right now, if we do not approve these bids, we lose out on the ability to get this money and use this money for this improvement for our city. Is that correct?
Well, correct them for the fact that it's in this year's budget. So yes, you are correct when you say that. It's in this year's 1920 Act 51 budget.
Right.
And
so
then it's also for the front approach apron for the fire department is in this year's capital in 1920. So yes, you are correct to that.
And so, so let's say that we didn't do it this year. Could we use those funds next year, or we need to do it this year because
there's no capital in this year's budget. Current budget moving forward 2021. Makes sense?
Yeah, it does. I guess I thought this was like CBGB money or something. Where
No.
This
No.
isn't. This
No.
is something we budgeted, and it's for the safety of both our residents and then our fire trucks and our public safety officers in terms of approach into and out of the fire.
Absolutely correct.
And it's
Approach
money that
that's
was
much. Yep,
I'm
I'm sorry, but yeah, it's money that was already put in this year's budget. Correct.
And either way, it was already allocated. And even if we are now in April, and even if we have 4.4 or 6 or 8 million, even if it's only the low, which was 4.4, we have enough to pay our bills for 90 days because it's already allocated, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
No, just
It was budgeted, Amy, you have to allocate it again.
I'm sorry, say that again, Mr. Mayor.
It was budgeted, it was.
Yeah, right.
Allocated. Yeah.
Oh,
I believe that's what you meant, right? That it's budgeted.
I did. Yeah, thank you. I'm still learning the financial terms. Correct. So
Oh,
we would be
and
allocating it today then. Is that
Ms.
correct?
Bransky, Ms. Bransky, the way it works is this is out of Act 51 money, which is money that we get from our gas and weight tax, not general fund. The general fund is the one where you're talking about the fund balance of 25% in that. This is out of the major street fund, which is Act 51 money that comes from the sale of gasoline and registration for cars.
Awesome.
And we're required under the act to spend 1% per year on non-motorized improvements, or 10% over 10 years. And we haven't been doing that.
Okay.
So that's why we had budgeted to do half this year and half next year. And that's why there was 100,000, 50 this year, 50 for next year to do all those sidewalks in one big program.
Oh, perfect.
Starting this year and going, and that's what we're doing.
Thank you. That's what I had thought, that it was, we had an obligation that we really wanted to try to meet, and you just clarified it. Thank you very much, Mr. City Manager.
Any other questions for council?
I do.
Go ahead.
Hey, Nick, just because, since they're already doing all this work for us, have we made any progress with using any of the CBGD funds or anything for continuing a little bit of sidewalk down Grove towards McKinley Park? Because I know we had to get, approval from the residents and so on and so forth, but did we get any headway with that? And can we get a good deal from this company to do that at this time as well, or no?
It hasn't been discussed, no.
Can we make that part of the discussion and kind of figure that out? And have we reached out to those residents at all yet?
No, we have not. Not that I'm aware of, no.
All right, is that something that we could do?
Yes, something that we've been talking about.
But
Okay.
we don't have any CDBG funds to do this, to do the sidewalks.
Okay, well, can we still at least figure out what it's gonna be? And I mean,
Sure.
honestly, if we've got a good bid and this company seems reliable and they're gonna do the work, if we extended that little bit of work, because it's not a huge scope of work to include it, we might get a better bang for our buck at this time if we do it and if the residents are on board. And again, that's making safety, it's a safety issue to get two people to and from that park without having to cross the street and so on and so forth, which they have to do right now. I mean, that's just my thought process.
No, we can do that, Patrice, that's not a problem. I think they can, like the residents and look at it, and maybe even put it as part of this project or bid it out for next year.
And we have used Mattioli's quite a few times in the past. They did our last road bond project, and I've done our last two capital Act 51 concrete patch projects also. So they're well familiar with our city, and they do excellent work.
Councilman Boraski?
Yeah, I would concur with Councilwoman Shornack. I think that if we approve this bid, we reach out to them with the understanding, listen, give us a really, I don't know how it works, maybe if we have to do, get a quote so that we can get that done while they're out with their cement equipment and all of that. Because that's when it's going to be the cheapest, not next year or not coming back a separate time, but all when they're on. So I agree with Councilwoman Shornack.
Anybody else?
Mike?
Well, Mikey.
Thank you. I have a question. Patrice, you mentioned, and I recall some of that, where the residents were notified about those sidewalks
Well, they were
by the barrier park.
Well, they were supposed to be asked if they would, be
Were
willing
they?
to be sacrificed. Their lawn.
So what was the answer? Nick, were the residents notified by the barrier free about the sidewalks?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I don't believe so. I'm not
It
sure.
wasn't the barrier free. It wasn't for the McKinley Park. It wasn't for Fraser First to notify them because those are city sidewalks. That
Oh,
wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to reiterate, since we're on the sidewalks, that might be something, I thought we had done that, so I'm unaware also. So maybe that might just be a little, memo to however it's done in advance. I think it should be done in that area also.
Nick, I think you have a little bit of direction. You got it?
Sure, absolutely. Yep.
Councilman Boraski.
Amy, you're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry. Okay. So at this point, I'd like to make a motion. I'm trying to find the language to approve awarding the bid for the sidewalk replacement in North Fire Bay entrance to Matoli Cement Company LLC in the amount of $118,877.50.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Boraski, second by Councilman Blanky. Any comments or questions on the motion? Go back to council, all in favor? Roll call vote, please.
Member Lessig?
Yes.
Shornack?
Yes.
Member Wiki?
Yes.
Infrastructure, yes.
Member Baranski?
Yes.
Yes.
And Member Palmer?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, item E, Councilman Coco, this is your request to add to the agenda. You have the floor.
Yes, Mayor. So this kind of, this idea kind of came, well, it wasn't really my brainchild. I think between myself and Mr. Winowicki, we have talked about this at great length over the last year. And one of the things that I think we both agree is that it is becoming more and more apparent that we need it. We need an independent HR consulting firm to handle our city business. And I would like to have an RFP drawn up by our city attorney and put out for a 1-year contract. And I would like to have that company basically take care of all of our employee needs. And that would include a whole gamut of things. Handle all employment offers, contracts, if any, make sure they're all uniform, make sure they're all on the same page. Handle all advertising for new job postings, gathering of applications, implement and execute an application process, vetting, etc., in an objective way. Handle all benefit questions and payroll calculations. Implement a review process with individual clear defined goals. Handle the creation of all job descriptions with salary ranges subject to council discussion and approval. I think this is incredibly necessary going forward. I think it would put everything on the same page. It will help us, it will help us with there being objectivity in terms of reviews, hiring, obtaining applications, the whole application process, because we will have an expert that we will be able to partner with and move forward with and hopefully create a long-standing relationship in years to come. And that we can get the best qualified individuals that can come in and help us with our city needs going forward.
Screen froze up. Okay, the screen froze up for quite a while. Did everybody get that?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes.
Councilwoman Blanky, had your hands up?
Suzanne, would this, your idea and your statement, would be a part-time position you're considering?
It's not a position that is part of our employment. It is an independent consulting human resource department that we would have them handle all of our employment business. And they would give us a package when they put together their, what we call a bid, right? Or an RFP that would tell us, kind of like what we did with our city attorney, that would tell us, we would have the city attorney put it together. We would end up getting different ways of compensation, that they would need to be compensated for the different things we need that we're looking for having done for 1 year to see how it goes.
So like a contracted service? Is
Yeah,
that's
correct.
basically what you're saying?
Yes, an independent, objective contracted service.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Baranski.
Is the thought process that the HR consultant would report to council or would report to the city manager?
So I think at the beginning, it would report to council until we
Okay.
can kind of get things implemented in place the way that we would like them to be going forward. And then ultimately transition that over into a more hands-on direct coordination with the city manager and whoever with that company.
And then my second question, I assume it goes without stating, but that would also then encompass all HR issues that may arise within the city, whether it be employee to employee, employee to manager, supervisor, or whatever it may be.
Yes.
So in addition to HR, also encompassing all the other things you defined.
Correct.
Which fall under the HR umbrella, but I just want to make sure that that person's also doing the HR stuff.
The way I looked at it was to handle all city employment business.
Okay.
And we can make that as broad or as narrow as we want, but I think we should start broad and then, once we have some things implemented, then it might get a little more narrow as we go.
All right. I totally support that.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, Ms. Culca, if you'd like to make a motion on your suggestion.
Yes, I would. I did want to talk about the timeline though, very quickly, because I just want to make sure everyone is on board with what I kind of was thinking here. I did speak to Don about this. He believes it would be about 3 weeks to write up an RFP that would be comprehensive. He wasn't sure if council would like to have an evaluation of the final version versus just going ahead and presenting it out, giving 30 days for RFPs to be provided. And then at our June meeting, which would then put us at the June meeting, we would have, our candidates that we could then narrow down at that point and then decide, who we'd want to bring in for an interview process, with the understanding that we could do that at the July meeting, and then we can pick somebody at the July meeting after that process, and then maybe have them start in August, like August 1st-ish, maybe the 15th, something around there. I want to try to get this timeline set up because obviously I want this to happen fairly quickly. Obviously with government, it doesn't always work that way. But just wanted to get your thoughts on that, if there was anyone who had a different idea, or if you wanted, I've spoken to Don fairly lengthy or at length about this. I know that David has as well, but whatever your feedback is in terms of if you would like to see a final version before, that obviously will delay things a little bit, but we might be able to we have to ask Don when he could get us, a final version to be reviewed and approved first and then send it out. So.
Maybe at that time when it's ready for us to review or decide, maybe Don can produce a timeline based on when he finishes the RFP, if that works. If it takes him 3 or 4 weeks, then start from that date of how long it would take to complete the process.
No.
Councilwoman Moransky.
I think the issue is that Suzanne wants clarification from us on is whether we want to approve the final RFP before it's published. Is that what you're asking, Councilwoman?
Yeah, I want to just know, if he can just send us the final version, we can give it a verbal yeah, no, whatever, and then he can get it going, or do we need to have a formal meeting?
And I think we need clarification from Don on that. I think your timeline sounds spot on. I selfishly want to look at the RFP, but that being said, I agree with you. The broader it is, the better, because then we can, it's a work in progress, but I would defer to our council on that.
Mr. Mayor, do you want me to address that?
Go ahead. I'm not an HR expert, so I will follow council's lead and your lead on it.
Sure. So from a timeline perspective, I have no objection to whatever the wish of council may be. With the manager evaluation forms, I thought that process worked reasonably well. I put everything together, circulated it. We gave a deadline for council members to provide feedback. If you had any specific items to include or adjust, I would do that, and then circulate the final version saying here's what was amended or changed. And then hearing no objection or any strong objection from too many, we would just move forward with it, so you wouldn't have to worry about waiting until May 14th for it. Although the reality of that, I suppose, is by the time it circulates and circulates again, it's going to be around May 14th anyway. So you figure if I get it out to you, just looking at my calendar, let's assume I circulate it to you either on May 1st or May 4th. Give it about 3 weeks from tomorrow for a final product to go to all of you. Assuming we gave all of you a week to provide any feedback on it, that's around May 8th now. And then we have a meeting 5 days later. So I really leave it to your discretion as to whether or not you'd like to just approve it and have it authorized to go out at your meeting on the 14th, or if you like the protocol of just circulating, getting individual feedback, and then rolling with it.
Okay, well, personally, I don't mind just looking at it and letting you roll it out. One question is who would be responsible for doing the publications for the RFP into the websites and wherever you want to MML or whatever you want to do with them?
Right. I'd work with administration to make sure it got to the city website and obviously through MML and probably BidNet or Mitten. Some people know it as Mitten.
Yeah, because we have to publish for an RFPs, right? We have to send those out.
Right. It'll go out. It'll go out publicly. And of course, if we know of any specific agencies, it can go out to them directly. And the purpose of a request for proposal, the purpose of an RFP is to get creative proposals. It isn't a strict bid where everybody says, I'm going to do it for this dollar amount, and we take the low bidder. This is to get proposals for how best to serve the city with this need and these tasks.
Okay. Any comments and questions? Councilwoman Kolka?
I just have a comment. For me, I wouldn't mind just taking a look at it and then, just giving you the feedback. My thing is I would really like to have a good window so that we would be ready to go with candidates by that June meeting, because I think that's really critical in terms of trying to make sure that we can narrow this down and get things moving.
Councilwoman Baranski.
I concur. I very much thought the evaluation process was very smooth, and I feel like everyone had a say. So, and I agree that I don't want to hold it up just to rubber stamp what so far I've no doubt will be excellent work product.
Councilman Lessig, did you have a question?
Yes. What would the budget be for this? Because we're doing the budget, and this is going to be an expensive contract, so we should include that in any budgetary consideration.
Go ahead, Ms. Kolka.
Sure. So I did think about that. Obviously, we would need an appropriation for this. However, I do think that at this point we can get the RFP budget amounts back, and then we can discuss kind of how that will fit in.
The budget needs to be done by the third Monday in May, so we won't have the RFP numbers in before then.
So then I guess then we can put an amount that is kind of just out there, but we have money available to us, so we can use it. We do have more than 25% as of right now.
What would your budget number be?
I don't know what the budget number is, because I don't want that to inhibit my ability to get a good, I don't want there to be an amount in the RFP with regard to what the services that we're going to be getting. I would like to get the RFP, and then we can discuss it. If it is astronomical and it becomes $1.5 million, then clearly we're going to have to go in a different direction. But if it's a couple $100,000, we got to see what we're getting. If it's not doable or it's not feasible, then we can cross that bridge when we come to it. But as of right now, based on the numbers that we got from Wayne and what we got from Mr. Walters, there's a $546,000 differential between what's supposed to be in fund balance for 25% and what's actually there.
There is no difference. It's just the way we're calculating, or you look at the fund balance. But it's irresponsible to put out an RFP and try to do a budget at the same time without penciling in some number into the current or upcoming budget. So if it's 50,000, if it's 100,000, if it's 175,000, it's 200,000. I just need to know what that number is going to be so Mr. Walters can incorporate it into our finance.
If I can make a suggestion?
Yes, Mr. Denault.
I think this might help, Mr. Lessig. What if during the process of developing this, I'm able to put together a compilation of comparables, so that just some idea, some rough range idea of this kind of service by, say, the April 23rd meeting.
Yes.
That way, at the April 23rd meeting, when you're starting to talk about when we're setting the public hearing for the budget, you'll have an idea. And then as you get into budgeting, I'll have an even better idea for you, I'm sure, by then.
Are you asking me a question?
I'm good with that.
Thank you,
I
Don.
didn't. He was asking me. Are you asking me a question?
No.
Well, you said would it be all right if you had some comparables and some ideas?
Oh, right. Would that satisfy?
I have a broad-based HR RFP to handle benefits. All of these things is a very expensive process. I did this for my career. And so you're talking about spending $100,000 or $200,000 when we already have people in place. And so if we're going outside, that's fine. But to put a potential $100,000 or $200,000 budget hole is, in my estimation, irresponsible. So
Okay. Ms. Baranski was next.
Oh, I think Ms. Blanky actually hasn't spoke yet.
Kathy, go ahead.
I think what we should do, and we've done it before, what the mayor said about 8 minutes ago was that Councilwoman Calka, he did ask if you wanted to make a motion. So now that there's been input, possibly you could make that motion with guidelines relative to the wage, as we've done before with different positions. And then this way, as Don said, you know, I trust that he's going to do comparables, and then we'll have something to work with. I think we need a motion, as the mayor suggested. Just my thought.
Councilwoman Baranski?
Yes, I would love for Don to give us some guidance, because just putting out an RFP is not a guarantee that we're going to do it. And I have no idea how much it could cost. We could get an RFP for $50,000. We could get an RFP for $250,000, but depending on what's included. So I think that it's prudent to get guidance, but I don't think that that's a basis to not explore options, because what we're trying to do is, in my opinion, and I'm assuming you know what the direction was or what the thought process was, is we have had stumbling block after stumbling block in several different areas as we've tried to move forward with different things. And we've had some inconsistencies. And part of it is, you know, crises have come up and there's 7 people that want different things on council in terms of information. But how we've done it in the past has not worked. The citizens don't even know this. We did not go forward with the interviews that were scheduled for March 28th. And we didn't go forward with them, not just because of COVID-19 concerns. We, as a council, didn't have all of the information that we wanted collectively. I think that was a concern. I think there was a concern about vetting processes and applications and completeness of materials presented. So to me, this concept of getting consistency across all of these different areas is worth looking at.
Okay. Anybody else? Councilwoman Kolka.
So I'd like to make a motion to direct our city attorney to put together or to develop an RFP to hire an independent HR consulting firm to handle the city employment business with the following, to contain the following. To handle all employment offers and contracts of any, to handle all advertising for new job postings, gathering of applications, implement and executing application processes, vetting, etc. To handle all benefit questions and payroll calculations, to implement review process with individual clear defined goals, to handle the creation of all job descriptions with salary ranges subject to council approval. Obviously, we'll be working with them to kind of implement all of this at some point. Obviously, within that RFP, we'd like, well, it's a 1-year contract. If Don, you can get us some comparables as to what that might look like, just so we can kind of consider it when we go through the budget process. I think that's a good start. And I guess that would be my motion. And
Support.
I guess, and then to have it, to have the RFP ready for our review by May 1st, if I understood you correctly, to be about the right timeline that you might be able to get it for us.
Support.
We have a motion by Councilman Kalka, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Winowicki. Any questions on the motion? I'll bring it back to council. All in favor, roll call vote, please.
Did you say me?
Yes.
Yes. I said yes.
She said yes.
Dave?
Dave?
Yes. We can't hear her.
She's on mute.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
All right. Shornack, yes. Winnicki, yes. Carnegie,
Yes.
Member Baranski,
Yes.
Member Blanky,
Yes.
Member Kalka,
Yes.
Member Lesich.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, item F, I'm sorry, yeah, FG, discussion of city manager employee contract. Did anybody want to take the lead on this one? Ms. Kalka?
I was gonna just make a motion.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion to direct the city attorney to prepare a one-year contract extension with the city manager with the current terms except for a new 30-day notice provision for end of employment by the city manager and a 30-day transition clause, which will replace the 4-month salary clause, noting that this reduction is due to the fact that this is only a one-year contract instead of a 3-year contract.
Councilwoman Baranski.
I think procedurally we should vote first on the current contract, which requires that notification be given within 60 days, either by the city manager or council as to our desire to renew the contract. And if notice is not given within the 60-day time frame, it is automatically renewed. That's my only concern. And I know that based on the presentation, and I know based on conversations that Mr. O'Neill was advised about some desires of the council. And so my secondary issue would be, I would like to hear from Mr. O'Neill about his thoughts before we actually rule on a motion in terms of what the next contract would be, if that makes sense.
Okay. Mr. Denault, can you help us with the direction and sequence, please?
Sure, I think I was kind of waiting to see how the motion and second came about, but essentially both the mover and Ms. Baranski are correct in their points. Ms. Kalka's motion essentially is to extend to the city manager a replacement or new contract effective July 1st, which would be a 1-year term, and then only minor adjustments that she articulated to the terms of the new agreement for him. Ms. Baranski's point was that under the current agreement, there is a window of time in which the council is supposed to notify Mr. O'Neill that that agreement is not to be renewed. So really it's a combined motion. It would be a motion to advise Mr. O'Neill of the council's determination not to renew the original contract, but in its place, extend to him a new 1-year contractual agreement under the terms that have been extended. And then I think what Ms. Baranski has asked is for his response to that arrangement before any second has been made.
So Ms. Kalka, you would have to amend your motion, and then we would ask for Mr. O'Neill's comments before he second and vote.
I will amend my motion based on what Don just said. It's a two-part motion.
Right.
Do I have to repeat it again?
No.
Could you please repeat the motion?
Yes, please repeat. Don, could you help me with this?
Sure, will do. So the motion, as I understand it, if Ms. Kalka is agreeable to it, is a motion to advise the city manager that the existing contractual agreement will not be renewed, but in its place, offer to the city manager a brand new 1-year contractual employment agreement with the 2 modified terms as indicated on the record.
Can we say those terms again?
Sure, I can absolutely say those terms.
Thanks.
Sure. Okay, so it's a 1-year contract extension with the city manager with the current terms except for a new 30-day notice provision for end of employment by the city manager and a 30-day transition clause by the city, which will replace the 4-month salary clause, noting that this reduction is due to the fact that this is only a 1-year contract instead of the previous 3-year contract.
Mr. Denault said that we are not renewing this contract and this
Right.
would be a new one-year contract. That's different than the extension you just mentioned.
Correct.
Councilwoman Baranski.
Yeah, I agree with Councilman Lesage, and I know I've spoken with Don about this. I don't want to carry over the old contract, not in terms of the terms, but in terms of the wording and the legalese that is used. It is probably one of the poorest contracts I've seen in terms of clarity regarding what triggers what and when. So I'm not saying don't keep the terms in terms of salary or benefits or that kind of stuff, but I agree with Councilman Lesage. It's not a extension of the existing contract. And that's why I kind of wanted to make a motion to see where everyone felt to end the term, and then a second motion after we hear and discuss and deliberate what the new contract would be like.
So would the motion be to end the current contract?
That would be the motion I would make, correct? Just
Okay, so then
do that first, and then if Councilwoman Kelka was inclined to withdraw her motion, let's end the first motion. And apparently Don has. It's kind of nice you see right away when we're wrong.
Go ahead, Mr. Denault.
Sorry, I think to Mr. Lesage's point, I'm not sure that that is the exact answer. I think the answer is, as I understand the motion, it's not to end the current contract. It's to not renew it effective July 1st, but in its place, have a brand new contract effective July 1st.
Yes.
Yes.
So how is that different than ending the current contract?
It would be a non-renewal versus termination. It's not a motion to terminate the existing agreement. It's a motion to not renew the existing agreement, but supplement, or I'm sorry, not supplement, that's the wrong word, substitute a new contract in its place.
Correct. Termination triggers legal requirements.
All right, so I'm going to withdraw my first motion to make this a little bit easier to understand and get through. So the first motion will be not to renew the city manager's contract as exists, which I guess the date of the end of that contract is July 1st, or is it June 30th?
June 30th, I believe.
Yeah, I think so too. So
I would second that.
Is that good, Don, how we're going with that?
It sounds like we're breaking it into two motions. I was just looking at the agreement language. Yes,
Yeah.
that's a good first motion, sure.
Okay. So we have a motion and second on the floor. Any comments and questions on that motion? I'll bring it back to council.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Wayne. Sorry, we can't see you.
Yeah, I know. So it's my understanding, talking to Mr. Denault and my attorney, and conversations back and forth, that the only concern the council had was that it automatically renewed for a 3-year period in item 2C, and that they wanted to change that to a lesser amount, maybe 2 years or 1 year. And that was the only item that they were looking at. That was the only discussions I've had. And that's, you know, I know, Don, you've talked with my attorney. You've had conversations, and we were only looking at item 2C. Now we're talking about a whole new contract, changing the terms of the contract to 30 days. That was never discussed. So I don't know. I'm at a loss, because the contract actually, it renews July 1st for 3 years, for additional two years. This is the end of the first year of a 3-year contract. If you don't renew, if you don't automatically renew. So, again, Don, you can chime in because you've been in conversations with me and my attorney, and we were under the impression it was a 2C. The employment agreement shall renew for a 3-year period. We're going to change that. The employment agreement shall renew for a 1-year period annually on the anniversary date. So if you give me the notice and you don't renew it, you don't renew it. But it's 1 year. And the terms of the contract stay as they are.
Councilwoman Baranski?
Yeah, I just kind of want to make it clear to the residents that there has been no conversation by the council as a whole with the city manager about this contract. I just fear that they're going to assume that we had conversations through Mr. Denault that just did not exist. That's my concern. And my secondary concern is, and I thought I was making it clear, and I just think this is a poorly drafted contract. The terms themselves, I don't think, other than the fact that now you have a 1-year contract, you wouldn't give a 4-month transition for a 1-year contract when you gave a 4-month for a 3-year. Mathematically, that doesn't make sense. So, but that would be what we would debate, deliberate, and agree upon secondary. The contract as it exists indicates in clause C that we have to give notice within 60 days if we want to renew or not renew, as do you, and if neither side indicates, it automatically renews. That's my reading of the contract.
That's correct. And the severance agreement that is in my contract is standard in the industry, and it's actually low. And it doesn't matter if it's a 1-year, 2-year, or 3-year. The severance part of the contract is the linchpin of my contract and the notification. So I would never agree to a lesser severance. I wouldn't agree to that.
And that's exactly why I actually indicated I'd want to hear from you before I would consider the second part of.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had my review. I don't know where this came from or whatever, but you know.
Well, I thought it was articulated to you by the mayor that we were aware of the contract term, and by we, a few members of council at least, and that we wanted to have this discussion in public about whether we automatically renewed you for 3 years or whether we explored other options. Maybe I was misinformed by our mayor about the conversation you had.
Well, I'll leave that to the mayor to discuss that amongst you, but I was indicated that it didn't like the idea that it was being renewed for 3 years. And that was a problem. And that's the only thing that was addressed by and to the city attorney, myself, and my attorney. Don, you want to jump in anytime?
That's correct, Mr. O'Neill. I've talked to Mr. Ferran, the gentleman who helped you with the agreement the first time around. He sent me a revision that would change it to a 1-year term, and that's where you and he left it. And so now the motion maker has a couple of things they're running by you, it sounds like, for your response. I don't know that that's ever been discussed with Mr. Ferrand or you or I, because it hasn't.
No, this is the first I'm hearing of it.
Right.
Yeah, my conversation with Mr. O'Neill was plain and simple that we weren't going to proceed with any 3-year contracts going forward, and that I was not a negotiating body and would not negotiate any parts of the contract. But that was the sticking point that council wanted to move forward, most likely with a non-3-year contract with any position that we wanted to do going forward.
And so that's the way we approached it, that we would change item 2C to a 1-year period, if that's what the council so desired.
Councilwoman Kalka.
Wayne, you agree with us, though, that, and you understand that when we did this originally, the 3 years,
that 4 months, because you're basically making a commitment for up to 3 years. So the change is a transition change. It's really all it would be. It's not really a severance, if you will. It's a transition change where if we
No.
decided after a year we wanted to go in a different direction, then that's why it's a smaller time frame. It's not, you know, it's
No,
only.
let me say this. Let me say this, if I may, with all due respect.
Sure.
I agreed to 4 months. I wasn't realized I was going to be here how long. I agreed to 4 months. All my other contracts have 6 months, and most city managers have 6 months they start with, and they have a month of severance for every year that they're there, up to once they get to a maximum of a year, which is 6 years. That's standard in the industry. There isn't a city manager that would agree to give up their severance. That's the only thing we have is our notice requirement and our severance. And we would never do that. Never do it. That's the only thing we've got.
We actually, when we negotiated Mr. O'Neill's contract in the first place, we negotiated it down from 6 months to 4.
I did that to be a team player. And Patrice, you were there, and so was Kathy and Mike Carnegie.
So you're saying that if we extend a 1 year contract to you, you still want a 4 month transition clause?
It's not a transition, it's a severance.
Well,
It's a severance provision.
we're looking at it as a transition clause, or I'm looking at it as a transition clause.
Right. I'm okay, and I, with all due respect, Ms. Kelka, it is a severance package. That's part of my severance package. So in the event you decide to terminate or non-renewal, that's the only thing I've got. I would never give that up.
So what about, so then what would be, so if we wanted to have a transition period where you would actually help transition versus severance, meaning maybe you didn't work the whole time, would that then change?
No, I would, as a professional, I would help you in a transition period. The severance is something separate altogether. I would be more than happy to do that. The severance is for non-renewal or termination without cause. That's the only protection the city manager has. And I would never, I mean, I did it, I reduced it by 33%. And I know Patrice knows I reduced the car allowance. I reduced it, and Mike, the number of vacation days. There was a lot of give and take in this, and there was a lot more give on my side. I gave in. I didn't take. I gave in from the starting point. And if I'm wrong, Mayor Carnegie and the members of the council.
Yeah, you worked with council very well on that, on the package that you submitted. Mayor Pro Tem Winowicki?
Yeah, I think if we could go back for a moment and go back to Councilwoman Kalka's motion that this is the proper notice that we're giving. And that motion, I think we should take a vote on that.
Yep.
Because we jumped, in my opinion at least, I think we jumped from that motion into a contract negotiation. And if we could, I'd just like to go back and finalize the motion, and then we can get into other discussion.
So this started as a two-part motion. So we didn't jump from one to another. This started as a two-part motion.
It started as a two-part motion, but then it was rescinded and it was corrected into a one-part motion. And then we jumped ahead to a two-part. So I think we should go back and finish the one.
Correct.
That was rescinded and restated, and then we can move forward.
While we're still on this, I have one question, Don. If we were to do this and a one-year contract was offered with a 1 month severance, what would stop us in July after we signed the contract from immediately terminating Mr. O'Neill and then triggering the 1 month versus the 4?
And the answer to that, Mr. Lesich, is nothing other than you wouldn't have a city manager. But beyond the practical side, that would be the right of the employer, just as it would be the right of the employee to say, I'm leaving in 30 days and leave you without a city manager.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Yeah, thank you.
Councilwoman Baranski.
Yeah, I have a question, probably for Don. Mr. O'Neill said something, and I'm not sure if he meant what he said. If we non-renew this contract, is there a provision that he gets severance even with a non-renewal? I didn't see it in here, and so I want to make sure that we're aware of that, because I only saw a severance under termination without cause. And I guess in fairness, I also want to ask the city manager what his understanding is on a non-renewal, not a termination. Termination, it would be, have a nice, non-renewal is very much a different legal creature. Because if we already owe him 4 months by non-renewing this, that obviously changes what we do. Because then we modify this, maybe then the way you get the agreement is we modify this, keep the 4 months, modify the other terms. Does that make sense? That's what I'm asking.
Who's first? Me or Mr. O'Neill?
Go ahead, Don.
So, and Wayne, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the way Wayne explained to me the intent behind this agreement is that it renews every July 1st for an extra year to keep it at a 3-year contract, which is a very confusing concept, but it's the simplest way I can explain it. So by providing him with an indication council's not renewing, that isn't a termination. That's just the contract on July 1st doesn't have 3 more years to go. It has 2 more years to go. That's how Wayne explained to me that it was originally conceived when it was prepared with he and Mr. Ferrand back in the day, before my time. So that's how they've interpreted it. It is a little bit vague, and the language itself is not perfect to make that clear. It took a minute for him to explain that to me. But now that he has explained that to me, that would be the only effect of a non-renewal today, is just he wouldn't get that extra year added on, which would take it down to a 2-year. So that's why when I suggested the motion be a combined motion, it's not just that we're no longer renewing it for that 3rd year again. It would be, the idea would be to supplant it or substitute it with a brand new contract as well. So they are 2 separate concepts, but as I understood Ms. Cook's intent, it sounded like she intended for those 2 things to go together. But with that being said, they can still be done separately as well. It's just that the outcomes, we don't know what the outcomes will result in at the end of them. You're muted, Ms. Baranski, if you're speaking.
Do you agree? I don't see that in here at all in terms of the walkaway, the non-renewal. So, and maybe Wayne, if you could explain that to us. I am not following how it becomes a 2-year contract if we issue a notice of non-renewal. It doesn't make sense to me contractually. How do we ever get out of this without, how do we ever just walk away after 60 days without,
You can't. That's the whole point. The whole point of a severance clause. That's the only protection the city manager has. So there's no way to get out from under. Am I muted?
No, sorry.
No, you're fine.
That's why the city managers, we have severance clauses in there, so that they're ironclad, so there's no way to get out from underneath the severance. We put that in there. It's our only protection. And so just like Mr. Lester said, July 1st, you can say, okay, we've reduced it 3 months now. We're going to terminate you. Okay. So I also have in the contract that if you substantially alter the contract, I can deem myself terminated, and you have to pay me the 60-day notice and the severance. So you may not like the contract, but the contract is to protect me as well as you. Because I work at the whim of the council, and it takes 4 to hire and 4 to fire. And I've been through this for 45 years. I've heard horror story after horror story, and I would never, again, I've discussed this with Mr. Denault. I didn't know that there was no discussion going back and forth. The only item we talked about was item 2C, reduce it from a 3-year contract to a 1-year contract beginning July 1st, 2020. And the rest of the contract stays the same. And that's where I was approaching the council meeting tonight.
But under your theory then, 2C, which reads, the employment agreement shall renew for a 3-year period annually on its anniversary date, the 1st of July, 2017, and on each consecutive year thereafter, unless previously terminated by employer or employee as set forth herein. And just so that the residents understand, the termination clause, there's a couple different ways to do it. And then it indicates you have to give 60 days notice to terminate the agreement without clause, and then there's a whole termination clause. And then the resignation requires you to give us 60 days notice. But what clause takes it from a 3-year to a 2-year automatically?
Well, I mean, if it renews the July 1st for an extra year, and it's a 3-year contract, 1 from 3 equals 2.
I'll get it.
I just don't see that in here. I mean, I'm only a.
Okay, well, again,
But
again,
that being said, I'm not looking to, I mean, I'm trying to not.
For simplicity.
Yeah.
For simplicity for the council.
This is.
All you need to do, and Don has the language from my attorney, is to change item 2C.
Well,
you want to read that to him, Don?
I'm not comfortable with this contract for other reasons, not changing the terms, but I don't think this is a contract that makes it clear for both from your protection, if I was your attorney, and the city's protection. There are so many ifs, ands, or whats, and who is that referring to, and who's this referring to? And the simple fact that we can't look and point and say, yep, this is what this says, it's supposed to be cut and dry. And that's why I had thought the agreement would be that Don would draft a contract that gave you all the same terms in terms of benefits and salary and whatever we agreed to as a consensus. I don't think we've even had a conversation about what the severance or transition or whatever you want to call it is. But so Don, I'm actually kind of at a loss because now you said something different that makes me think it shouldn't be 2 separate motions.
Oh, well.
Can we do this at April 23rd meeting when we have our ducks in a row?
If we don't have a meeting on April 23rd, it renews automatically.
Councilwoman Charnett.
Well, I want clarification on the severance thing, because I will tell you with absolute 100% certainty that I did not interpret that severance, if we do not renew, that you automatically get a 4-month severance. I took it as if we fire for no cause, or say we're terminating the contract for no cause, then we would pay a 4-month severance. It wasn't, there was nothing, because there's no way, because I was adamant after our last city manager that I wasn't paying a severance again, unless we let you go for no cause. So I did not interpret it that way at all when I read that. I would never have said okay to that, because our last city manager, I was not happy about having to pay a severance, and I absolutely wouldn't have done it again. So I guess your interpretation versus my interpretation, and everybody's interpreting differently because it's not clear legal language. And so that's just my feeling on it, because I don't think 4 months, if we don't renew the contract and we offer a new contract, I don't think we should have to pay a 4 month severance. And that's just the way I feel about that. And because after our last experience, I know, if we don't renew a contract, we don't renew a contract. That's just like in any other contractor in the world for any other purpose. You know, if we give you the proper notice and everything like that, I'm very confused of how the language now is being interpreted differently.
Councilwoman Chernak. I'm sorry, Councilman Kolka.
Thank you, Mayor. So I tend to agree. Obviously, it's very confusing as to what it really intentionally is supposed to mean. I do agree that based on what it says there's a difference between termination and not renewing a contract. So I think it's important that we make it clear that we don't want to renew the contract. We're not renewing the contract. At least that would be my motion. But I also think it's important that we indicate that in its place what the city is offering to substitute in. Now, the question then becomes, the issue, you know, of what Mr. O'Neill, you know, will agree to, and whether that's the direction that council wants to go in. I think that if I make a motion to just indicate that it is the city of Fraser's intention not to renew the contract, as the current contract as written, but we are offering a new contract with new terms. I think that may you know, be enough. But if he doesn't want it, I mean, I guess that at the end of the day, number one, we have to decide if we want to make this 2 motions or 1 motion. And number 2, are there going to be, or is there going to be, I mean, it could be rejected. And if it's rejected, then we don't have a city manager. And I mean, I for one, I mean, obviously I don't want that to happen, but I get it. I get it, but if we have to move forward without a city manager, well, then we have to move forward without a city manager, I guess. You know, we've had to make hard decisions before as a council. We've done some things that have not come easy. We've had to lay off cops. Nobody wants to do that. We had to close down Sarisa. So, I mean, and I want the residents to understand that all of this is for them. We are really trying to dig deep and make sure that we are doing this to make sure contracts like this are why we need an HR department, because this does not benefit the city. This benefits, and not take anything away from Wayne. He works hard. I get that. But this is why we're going through this process, because we want to make sure that we're trying to do our due diligence here. And for me, you know, I think that I want to offer Mr. O'Neill an extension of the contract for 1 year. But I think it's in the city's best interest to give him a transition period in the event that we decide not to renew or we decide to go in a different direction at some point. Because, I mean, we definitely have, there's a lot going on, and we need to, you know, I think that it's important that the residents understand why we're going through this. And I apologize if I'm not articulating it as well as I wanted to, but my point being is if we're at an impasse, we're at an impasse. If there's no room to negotiate, then there's no room to negotiate. I'm a lawyer, so that's what I do all day. And sometimes you got to give stuff you don't necessarily want to give, but you got to understand where somebody's coming from, and you know, both sides have to give. And so, I'm not necessarily saying that, it's got to be 30 days, but for me, I can't agree to 4 months. It's just not going to happen.
Well, I will say that I did not come here prepared to negotiate. I came here with what I told you that was discussed with Mr. Denault and my attorney relative to item 2C. I'm at a loss. I'm at a loss. I've had no review from the council. We haven't even had that. I would just refer to you to item 3B and just read that whole thing. And then, I'm not prepared. This council table stuff all the time, and they're not prepared. They don't have the information. I did not come prepared to negotiate a contract. And Don, you know that you need to chime in somewhere.
Yep, happy to. So let me see if I can help just move this along and summarize where we're at. What I've heard is a motion that would, and I'm not going to be formal on this summary, a motion that would essentially swap out the existing agreement for a new agreement. The new agreement be 1-year term beginning July 1st, ending June 30th of 2021. It would be for the same terms of employment, and the only exceptions or changes by the motion maker were to suggest or to ask Mr. O'Neill to modify the severance provision from 4 months to 1 month. And then the only other change was instead of 60 days notice, 30 days notice by either side, if either side wanted to end it. That's the only thing I believe in the informal way of summarizing this that has been placed before the council for consideration right now. The response from Mr. O'Neill is, I'm not prepared to address the 4-month or the 30-day notice changes. I came here tonight expecting or thinking I'd be happy to swap out the old agreement for a new agreement for a 1-year term. I think that's where we're at tonight. I think in looking at the old language and the new language that his attorney sent to me, which aren't that different, the old language really, it is ambiguous, as Ms. Baranski pointed out, and it does cause some to question what it actually means. But as I look at it right now on my screen next to me here, I believe what it says is that this agreement's going to renew on July 1st. It doesn't matter if we decide tonight or on April 23rd or on May 1st or May 15th or any other day. It says it's going to renew on July 1st unless one of the two sides has ended this, just terminated it. It doesn't say not renewed or provided notice that we don't want it to renew. If it said that, then I think that would have been written differently to make it clear that we had to give them 60 days before the renewal, that it's only going to now go for 2 years, and then the following year tell them it's only going to go for 1 year. Because it's sort of this sliding scale concept that Mr. O'Neill's tried to explain is the way it was written. The idea that it just adds another year. He served a year, so it adds a year. Served a year, it adds a year. And for us to provide notice that we don't want that to happen, I don't even know that that's in this contract as an option. I think it's just you give him 60 days if you don't want him anymore. He gives you 60 days if he doesn't want you anymore. But it just renews on July 1st. And it renews for that extra year, so it's always a 3-year term. And at any time, on 60 days notice, either side can go away. And if the city decides to turn away, then it would owe him for 4 months because it's a 3-year contract. And the only time that wouldn't make sense for Mr. O'Neill, I suppose, is if you're at the very, very end of the 3 years and you get to a point where 4 months doesn't make sense. But for the most part, the 4 months protects Mr. O'Neill, he's saying, because it would be then his obligation to try to find employment elsewhere. But to summarize this, I think in a nutshell, I don't believe it says we have to tell him today or on April 23rd that we don't want the 1 year added on again, this renewal concept. I think what it says is if he's ever terminated on 60 days notice, we pay him for 4 months. And he's indicated in response to that he would still like the 4-month clause, but he's willing to take a 1-year contract and substitute it in for this one. Does that help? I don't know. I hope so.
Councilwoman Baranski. You're muted, please.
Sorry, okay. It does help. I just would circle back to paragraph 2C that talks about the renewal requirements, that it automatically renews unless previously terminated. And so this is the clause I think Wayne is saying his intent was for that to be a 2 or a 3, then a 2, then a 1 in ad infinitum, whatever it is. But I read that as it's an automatic renewal unless it's terminated. So when you're coming, and you nailed it on the head, it makes no sense for a party to agree to a 4-month severance on a 3-year contract that would be paid if the 3 years is completed. So that contractually makes no sense. And so if that's what our previous attorneys drafted and agreed to, shame on them, and counsel was clearly misled, because I don't read it that way, and I'm hearing it for the first time. I don't see it, but but that being said, I 100% understand the concern about the need for a severance. And so I guess the question is, setting aside the length of the term of the severance, are you amenable to a 1-year contract? Yes or no?
Yes, just change that item 2C to a 1-year contract.
Okay. Are you agreeable that the 1-year contract would not have this interpretation that you have, or that we could modify the contract so it would not have the interpretation that you have about it, that it would end next July, definitively, regardless of anything else?
It would be a 1-year contract that would automatically renew unless you do something. And so if you decide not to renew it, and you give me the 60 days, then I have my severance agreement. That's all we have. And Don, I should have my attorney here. I wasn't prepared for this. This is not fair.
Well, it's on the agenda, so I'm.
Well, no, I understand that, but you have to understand what I was led to believe.
No. And Wayne, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. This isn't definitive, because I'm assuming what would happen is we'd have a theoretical concept. The contract would then be this is what I thought was going to happen. The contract would be drafted, would be brought back to us after you've approved it for the council to vote on, because I thought there would be some tightening up with the language, because I think it doesn't say what you think it says. I think if you want it to say that,
well, everybody has their own opinion and interpretation of a contract. So that said, I'm not going to speak anymore to this contract. I'm not prepared for it. I don't want to say anything that I may be misspoken. I've had the same contract for many, many years. It's ironclad. I have never had any problems with it. I'm not going to speak. I wasn't prepared to do this, and this is not fair to me.
Councilman Burnett.
Yeah. I just want to stick with the one motion that is on the table right now, and then we can bring up the secondary part of this, which is so that gives Wayne time to get his attorney, and we can all get our thoughts out to Don, and Don can articulate to his attorney our thought process or whatever. I just think at this point, that just for time's sake, and because Mr. O'Neill he does deserve his representation, so that we're all on the same page, I think at this point we should just put it to a vote whether or not we want to renew the current contract that is to end July 1st. And then we can revisit new terms or other terms with Mr. O'Neill on the 23rd when we have our other meeting. And then he can have his attorney present, and maybe there can be some dialogue between the council members and Don and his attorney. That's my thought.
Well, that's something that should be done in executive session.
Well, I agree.
That is not something
because if I wanted to have your review last meeting when we actually had a meeting, and because that meeting went on in perpetuity forever and ever, because it was poorly scheduled, but I have that I'll bring up at the end. I wanted to do it then, and it got postponed again. So I am trying to extend an olive branch to at least get this particular thing moving forward and give you an opportunity to get your ducks in a row, have everybody voice their concerns to Don. Don and your attorney can talk about what they think is fair and unfair and so on and so forth. And that way everybody's equally represented.
Mr. Denault.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd recommend that we don't even make a motion or don't even act on the motion. There hasn't been a second that I know of. Let's not act on it tonight because I don't think it serves any practical purpose to do so. I don't see anything in the current agreement, despite the ambiguity. Now that it's been explained better through Mr. O'Neill's lawyer and I don't see anything in here that says we can just make a motion to not renew it for the extra year. I say let's just avoid that tonight. It sounds like Ms. Shornack is suggesting, and it's up to the council, of course, that maybe we go back and talk to Mr. O'Neill a little bit more and his attorney, Mr. Ferrand, who's a very nice guy and easy to talk to, and talk to them about these concepts that have been raised tonight and what they think of them, rather than continue to explore it like this. But again, I defer to the council. I just don't think that motion has any practical effect. And in fact, it makes me more nervous now about using it because it's not part and parcel of the substitution in of a new agreement. And I kind of thought that was going to be the seamless transition. So I'd like to see that happen if we could down the road.
Well, another point I just want to make is we're in the middle of a crisis right now, and we gotta do it the right way going forward. Completely, just to act on half of something and not be able to understand what the second half we're going to respond. It's just going to put us in a position where, you know, we're shorthanded now and things are crazy, and we got to do it right. That's all. Councilwoman Baranski.
So Don, is it your legal opinion that it's a safer bet to do it as a two-part to therefore to try to ensure continuity over the short term and explore in greater detail what the risks are if we non-renew, and if that automatically kicks in the 4-month severance?
I think the answer to that, the answer to that's not quite the same, the answer to the same question. I think my legal opinion for tonight is, having the agreement in front of me and the new proposal from Mr. Ferrand, his attorney, in front of me, I believe that it should be a substitution.
Okay.
I don't feel comfortable doing one half of that substitution now and postponing the other half. I don't think it has any legal effect.
That's what I
think
saying.
it has to be done in one fell swoop.
When did you get that legal proposal from Mr. Foran? So the residents know, council does not have that.
No, you do not.
You know, because I don't want them to think we are delaying it on our end.
No. Mr. Ferrand sent me a copy of it Tuesday afternoon, and I talked to him on the phone. I don't know what date. It probably was yesterday, and he had to explain to me the concept that we just talked about, the idea that. And what he did was, all he did was send me back the old agreement. He didn't even change the dates, which is one of the things I talked to him about. I want to change the dates. But he sent me back the old agreement with changing it to a 1 year instead of a 3 year. And that's all I have in front of me. There's nothing else substance in that document worthy of discussion. It's just he changed it from a 3 year to a 1 year.
So I would be comfortable then tabling it till the 23rd to allow the city's attorney and Wayne's attorney to hopefully get a document that everyone can agree says what it says, and then we can transition, or we can at least discuss what a transition would. I mean, I don't know where I'm at because I don't know what Wayne wants, because I'm for the first time hearing that this contract has things in it that I don't see. and at the end of the day, I just want it to be crystal clear what he gets and what protections the city has going forward with any contract we enter with anyone. So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I think it's a good suggestion. I think that, as I said, doing it halfway one time and then have to do the other second half another time, as Don said, is not very smart at this time. And we've got some time to the 23rd. Let the two attorneys work it out between themselves and what's the best way to write it so everybody understands it black and white. You know, there's two attorneys on council that they can understand black and white better than anybody. So I'm all for that going forward that way. Councilman
I
Calco.
support that, Mr. Mayor. I support that as well because it is like any other thing. We've vetted it pretty nicely tonight. People have had an opportunity to talk about what they would like to see in it. And that's what we do, right? That's our process. We talk about that, we give direction, and we work through it and then come back to you. So I think that's a good process.
Right. Thank you. Councilman Calco.
Sure, thank you. So I'm going to withdraw the motion at this point. Obviously putting the motion out there at the very beginning got this ball rolling pretty quickly. So I'm kind of glad that I did that. And, so I'll withdraw the motion at this point, and then we can get some more direction from our city attorney going forward for the 23rd.
Great, thank you.
Do we need a motion to table it or to postpone it to the 23rd?
Yes, would someone like to do that, please?
I'll make a motion to postpone discussion of the city manager's contract until the April 23rd meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilwoman Baranski, seconded by Councilman Calca. Any questions on the motion? Okay, a roll call vote, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
You're muted.
Okay. All right, Member Winawiki,
Yes.
Member Carnegie,
Yes.
Member Baranski,
Yes.
Member Blanky,
Yes.
Member Kalka,
Yes.
Member Lesich,
Yes.
and Member Shornack.
Yes.
All right, 23rd.
Okay. Okay, pending items on unfinished business, report of city administration. Mr. O'Neill, did you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just going back to my office because
Okay.
I'm echoing in there in the council chambers.
Great, thank you. That helps me.
Yeah, okay. So, we've been having these updates for the city council on a weekly basis where we've had conference calls and everybody's with these Zoom meetings and everybody's been involved. And so I think it's incumbent upon me to make a presentation on to what we've been doing with this COVID-19 issue going back just before the last council meeting that we had. Let me begin by indicating that the decisions we have made and will be making are done with limited information and may have to change as we learn more. We are keeping out in front of the crisis and responding accordingly. I have determined and identified who are essential personnel within our organization in conformance with the governor's emergency order. Essential administrative staff is coming to work every day in support of the public safety first responders and the Department of Public Works. As you know, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the governor has determined what our essential employees and the support staff and finance and that are, and myself and Kelly for the elections are deemed essential personnel because we support them. We are on call 24/7 and stay in constant contact with key personnel, and we are communicating our activities to the mayor and city council on a daily and weekly basis with a combined staff and informational meeting. We understand that we have many different stakeholders in our community with different needs and concerns. We are addressing the concerns of these stakeholder groups that we have an impact on. I will be addressing some of these as we go through this communication. We realize that our citizens are facing many different problems, both in terms of COVID-19 virus and the financial impacts on their household. We are staying extremely busy with coping and complying with the governor's order and the extension to the end of this month, as well as the increasing problems associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. This is occupying most of our time. We have two completely different sets of issues that we must deal with, one being the safety concerns of our employees and the other being the safety and concerns of our citizens. I have closed all municipal buildings to the public and extended the closings through the end of April. We are conducting essential administrative functions as required, and we are doing social distancing and reducing the number of people within one area. Non-essential employees are not coming to work. As a reminder, we have a drop box here at City Hall for paying water bills and other correspondence. We're emptying it twice a week. We are not levying late fees on water bills at this time. We are taking everyone's temperature twice a day, and employees are to stay home if they are experiencing any symptoms of COVID-19. We have platooned our DPW department into 2 shifts, working 2 10-hour days per week, and requiring all personnel be on call during normal business hours. We have additional employees on call in the evenings and weekends for emergencies. These emergency protocols will ensure the separation of employees to prevent everyone from having to be quarantined at the same time in the event any of our personnel test positive for COVID-19. These protocols are similar to other communities, not only for quarantine and separation reasons, but also to ensure healthy personnel in the event we are asked for mutual aid in a community that could not avoid infection and spread of the virus to all of their DPW workers. I have discussed the many things I am doing with City Council and City Attorney Don Denault, who has indicated that under the emergency that I have the complete authority to do whatever is necessary to maintain the operations of the city and to protect the service of our citizens. Most cities are doing the same things that we are doing, and we're looking for any reimbursements from stimulus packages. The federal government passed the Families First legislation that dictates what we can and cannot do with our employees and the effects of COVID-19 and paid time off. Don Denault, Ryan Fantuzzi, labor attorney, and I have been meeting by phone conference, making sure we are in compliance with all applicable federal and state requirements. This is a fluid situation, and regulations are changing almost daily. The federal government passed the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security CARES Act. That is a $2.2 trillion package to assist almost all facets of our society. This will impact our organization, and we're hoping to get relief from any additional costs it may be incurring. We will continue to evaluate the need for all future meetings, including the council meeting scheduled for April 23rd, which falls during the governor's stay-home period. We do not have any intention to cancel any meetings at this time, but we'll evaluate our situation as we get closer to the dates. Code enforcement activities have decreased, and we are responding to emergency situations. Building permits can be obtained online. The Parks and Recreation and Senior Center remain closed, as well as our parks. Our senior coordinator is working mostly from home. We are not doing any enforcement with the parks if people are walking on the paths, etc. We're asking that they do not use the equipment that are out there. The senior van service continues to be operated and coordinated for grocery appointments only, as most doctors' offices are closed. We are monitoring Hidden Pines for compliance with stay in place and social distancing. We have completely cleaned the common areas of the building. The interim public safety director believes that if you do not need to be out, then you shouldn't be out. Most public bodies are paring down their agendas to only the most crucial items, just to keep them minimized so everyone's time can be spent on emergency priorities. We are planning on having a virtual meeting for April 23rd, 2020. We have public hearings that are required for the budget process. The agenda format will have to change to avoid problems other communities are having with unruly comments. There will be one hearing of the public at the end of the meeting. The required public hearing will have to be different, but we are working on a solution. We continue to be inundated with the fluid situation on COVID-19. This has been an incredible challenge, but everyone is rising to the occasion. Once I'm done with my comments, Mayor Carney will discuss the public aspect of what we are doing. We are asking that the general public bear with us as we develop these virtual meetings. I know Michelle Fiakowski had worked out most of the bugs yesterday and the day before. And of course, when you're dealing with electronics and things like that, we didn't go through smooth as we hoped we would. We were advised today that our waste hauler, GFL, will not be picking up yard waste. It was supposed to started Monday, April the 13th. So they're suspending it for the time being. We won't be charged for that, obviously, because they're not providing the service. So we need you to know that you may be cleaning your yard up, but please don't put it up because we can't take it. But I will say to you that I have, in accordance with the executive order, and by the order of the city manager, I am deeming the Easter Bunny and his activity on Sunday, April 12th, is hereby deemed an essential service provider by the city of Fraser. So I just wanted to make sure that I got that clear to all the kids out there that the Easter Bunny can come around. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
I don't remember clearing that for you, Mr. O'Neill.
I think we could all concur with that. That is a very good idea.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you.
I'll start off with Councilwoman Baranski.
Wayne, I just have a couple of questions, and thank you for that update. You indicated that we won't be charged by GLF for not picking up the waste. Have we confirmed that we're not going to be charged during the period of time that they are not?
We won't. If they make a mistake and bill us, we won't pay them. But they won't. They shouldn't be putting it on our bill.
Okay.
Because they only bill us for the weeks that they do it. And they were going to start the 13th of April.
Okay, that's what the contract says. They bill only for when they do it.
Yes.
Okay. I would love if we would send something back to them, just reconfirming our position that we are not paying for periods they don't do it, just to make it crystal clear that there's no ambiguity on our side about what our intent is. And then the other question I have for you is, do we have a May election? I know there is a May election, but is the city of Fraser going to have one? And if so, what is on the ballot?
I would defer that to your city clerk.
There's no May election.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about the logistics of that. Those are the only two questions I had for you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, report of mayor and city council. I will start from the top. Councilwoman Kathy Blanky.
Well, thank you. I just would like to go back to the contract, Wayne, where I understand we wouldn't pay them for a service they wouldn't deliver. However, what are the residents supposed to do with mulch or cut grass or limbs or what do people do with this?
Well, what they used to do is they use a compost pile, but.
Okay, so that's I understand that, but that's not my, I'm not looking, what is the city going to provide for them to do?
Well, we're not, the governor's order here, and Don and Alton had these conversations today about, the governor's made it perfectly clear that you can't even have a landscape company come cut your grass.
Okay,
it's a non-essential service.
I appreciate her clarity. However, on our side of it, did it end with any kind of resolve relative to what, the residents are supposed to do? Did they give any kind of an answer?
No, they don't do that.
But just on a call today with the governor's office, there are going to be changing some titles of essential and non-essential workers next week. So there's going to be a new list that's going to be published that who can go back to work for non-essential and essential items. Hopefully that will be updated, and I'll be on that call hopefully, and I'll send an update to everybody if I get one.
Thank you, Mayor. That makes sense to me. Maybe we won't even need a conclusion or something for the residents. I just would like to say that very seldom through the town in the car, and it is the eeriest thing. We're all experiencing the same sadness and loneliness and confusion, and I am proud of Fraser because it really is. Everyone seems to be abiding by the rules, and I know how hard it is, especially for our younger residents and their younger children. So through it all, and as we get through it, and God willing, it'll be over soon, I wish everyone patience and good health, and God bless us, and God bless this whole situation. Good night.
Thank you, Kathy. Mayor Pro Tem Winawiki.
I have very little to say. 4 a.m. comes early for me, so I'm going to keep it short. Don, thanks for all your help tonight. You were right in there just helping us out big time. I appreciate it. Yeah. And April 23rd, oh boy, Easter's going to come before that. So happy Easter, everyone.
Thank you, Dave. Councilwoman Amy Baranski.
Yeah, first I want to thank the residents for their patience with us. To me, it was very important that we have this meeting. I know that other cities and municipalities just canceled meetings, and I want to be, as I campaign, and I know everyone on council agrees with me, and that's why we worked really hard to do this, and there were still some bugs, and we'll get it worked out. But the more you see us deliberate here in this kind of format, the more you're informed about what's going on. And just because something's on the agenda doesn't mean it's going to happen. This month was a little bit unique. We did change the agenda rules, but our city manager was very busy daily with COVID-19 issues. So we didn't get the agenda ahead of time to consider whether we should or shouldn't be talking about different things. But just because we talk about something doesn't mean we're going to have action. And the residents also need to know that sometimes we have to make decisions, otherwise we lose the ability to control how the money is spent. And so know that, at least from my perspective, I'm doing all I can to make sure that we as a council get to decide how and when and where any money that we have is spent. And that is important to keep in mind. I want to let the residents know, I think we touched on it earlier, that the interviews are on hold for the finance director and the DPW director. I think that we'll have more clarity as we navigate through this HR proposal, but that's on hold because of COVID-19 and then those other issues. But I also want to let the residents know that we did get confirmation that our PSOs, who have been working around the clock tirelessly, the PSOs themselves did vote unanimously did advise unanimously in favor of considering or having discussions about the 24s. Obviously right now is a challenge because they're busy being safe and saving residents and keeping our city safe. But I'm hoping that in the future we can get that conversation going about what it would take to change the contract terms to satisfy both sides. So I'm excited that they were very excited. I'm very appreciative of them. And I want to personally thank them for acknowledging the challenges that the city has, both financially and with attracting and maintaining quality young people. And I think that this willingness to try is going to benefit us all. And segueing into that, the question that I have then is, what are we going to do? We have a closed door session scheduled for April 23rd already. And I would like to have a closed door session to discuss the 12 and 24 proposals with the command unit. And I want to know logistically how we go about doing that. And I guess that's probably Don's area.
Mr. Mayor, do you want me to speak to that?
Sure, you can.
Just briefly, if there's a second item for a closed session that we'd like to see on the agenda, I would suggest that any council person, Ms. Baranski, it could be you, just either submit that as an agenda item or right, I guess for tonight, maybe you should make a motion to add that to the agenda because it is a special meeting. And it's best to have the special meeting agendas set because by rule, the special meeting should only cover the ground that is on the agenda in advance, just in case someone has to miss it. It's not fair to bring up new items. So that's sort of a longstanding rule for special meetings. So if there is something to add to the agenda for that meeting, it might be best to do it tonight, either now or before we're finished, to make a motion to add that topic. And then it'll probably have to be with, since Mr. Fantuzzi will be with us anyway, with him to talk to him about that strategy.
So
I thought you mentioned closed door meetings, Don, which we can't do at this time because of the COVID.
We have
Well, it's not that we can't do them. We just have to figure out technologically how to restrict the virtual meeting to just those
right.
the council invites in.
Yes, so I would make a motion then, it's going to be actually, I would make a motion that we have a closed door session at the beginning of the meeting with Ryan to discuss the command unit negotiations to include but not be limited to the 12 24-hour shift proposal.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments and questions on the motion? Okay, all in favor, roll call vote, please.
Okay, Member Winawiki,
Yes.
Member Carnegie,
Yes.
Member Shornack,
Yes.
Member Lesich,
Yes.
Member Kalka,
Yes.
Member Blanky,
Yes.
Member Baranski.
Yes.
All right, wonderful, 7.
And just to follow up, Mr. Mayor, I will work with Mr. Fantuzzi and Mr. O'Neill to make sure that we put that together properly, probably in the form of a legal opinion from Mr. Fantuzzi.
Yes, please. And especially with this type of language back and forth, and it does need to be closed session, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Thank you.
And other than that, I just hope that everyone is safe and appreciates the efforts of everyone that took the time to make this meeting a success. I appreciate everyone's efforts and look forward to getting rid of the kinks and having it be seamless by next time. And I think we'll do it. So everyone have a wonderful holiday, be safe, and hopefully the weather it's kind of hailing out there a little bit, but hopefully it'll warm up because the other day was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Councilman Michael Lesage.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I want to thank Michelle, Ed Horn, Ms. Dolan, and everyone else for putting together these Zoom meetings. And I know it's been a challenge. Hopefully we get all the bugs worked out of it and stream on YouTube and all those new ways of reaching residents. As far as Easter Bunny, I'm fully in favor of assigning him essential duties for this weekend. And the last thing I'd like to say is to the community, to the employees of our city, thank you for being flexible and working through this very challenging time. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I wish the same for the residents. We will get through this, and we got a ways to go, but take a shower every day, do your hair once in a while, and at the end of the month, hopefully we can all come out refreshed. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mike. Councilwoman Shornack.
Yeah, I have a couple things. So since we are over budget on our legal fees, and that's been interesting, I'll just make a statement and then anybody can join in. But from this point forward, anytime that we have an attorney that is coming and we are paying, I refuse to let another attorney sit there for 5 hours and we're paying them to go into a closed door meeting. I don't believe any of our closed door meetings should be at the end of the meetings. If there are individuals there, especially legal representation, they need to be at the beginning of the meeting. Our meeting, that last meeting went on unbelievably long. I didn't need to. We need to plan the agenda more appropriately so that people are not sitting for hours on end. You know, if we're going to be in a closed door, they can come back and then check and stuff like that for those residents who actually like to participate in our meetings. So at this point, I would like to make it a regular thing that on our agendas, if there is anybody there that's to go into a closed door meeting that we are paying to be there, that we need to do those at the very beginning. Because otherwise I'll just let you know now, I will, and I know I'll be outvoted or whatever, but I will not approve that agenda.
Well, in retrospect, not to interrupt you, but last time we did that, we had, when we served the public, we had a number of public complain that they were ready to present or they wanted to be here, they had questions, and they had to wait for hours and hours and hours that time too. So we were flexible, trying to go back and forth.
Spending the taxes we're spending right now.
I know, we're trying to go back and forth to try to keep everybody happy is what we were trying to do. So, but
Okay, well, when we have all these negotiations and stuff going on, they need to be handled. We don't need to be paying an attorney $250 an hour for 5 hours to sit there while we're waiting to go into a closed door. Either that or then change the agenda around of how that works, because clearly it is not functional. And for us to be trying to deliberate and understand stuff at 2 in the morning is not reasonable, especially for most of us who work full-time jobs during the day as well. So,
yeah, I think I actually offered once if we could start a closed door meeting at 6:30.
Yes.
And do that earlier
I'm fine
before the
with that
meeting.
as well.
So if you
Me
guys
too.
are fine with that, then
I
we
am
can
perfectly fine with
try
that.
to work that in the schedule. But I heard that people were not happy with that either. So, but we'll
Well,
try
there's
that.
7 of us, so I don't know. I'm fine with 5:30 or 6:30.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Also, it was brought to my attention recently that there has been multiple complaints starting in April of 2018 with regards to the condominiums that are right off of the golf course, and about all the money that those residents are spending to keep critters out of their yards and trees from falling. And that they're, and she did forward all the information to me today, and it has not been addressed. And it's been going on since 2018. That needs to be addressed. I don't think our residents who are paying taxes there as well should have to deal with vermin coming into their yards and into their property. So I hope, Mr. O'Neill, you will get with our department, our code enforcement department, and get that remedied, because it's been 2 years. She sent me all the complaints and all the conversations that have gone back and forth. Mr. O'Neill?
Oh, yeah, that's been addressed, and that's been addressed.
When was
And
it
that's,
addressed? Because she
I'll,
sent me.
I will call you.
Okay, that'll be fine. I just don't think that our residents should have to wait that long for a resolve. And I do want to obviously extend my thank yous to all those who are trying to work through this COVID-19, especially our PSOs who are on the front line, who are taking care of our residents and doing it and giving our residents dignity. So I want to especially thank them, but I do appreciate the rest of the employees who are putting their best foot forward to keep the city business moving forward as well. And I hope everybody can have as nice of an Easter as they can without getting together. Have to virtually get together, I guess.
Thank you, Patrice. Councilwoman Kolka.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a whole lot. Just, make sure that everyone is taking this COVID-19 seriously with the social distancing. Do your part, and then it can end for all of us and we can get back at it. Obviously, Easter's coming, and it's going to be a great time for the kiddies, and it'll be wonderful. I think I've said a lot about a lot of different things tonight. We've had a lot of struggles, a lot of difficulty in the last probably 3 to 6 months. And that is one of the things, or one of the reasons why I made this proposal today for an independent HR consultant. I don't want to spend extra money, but I do think it's in the city's best interest to make sure that going forward that we have our I's dotted and our T's crossed. As you can see, just based on the discussion here today, that it's ambiguous, language is ambiguous, and we need to get all that sorted out because it's your money. It's your money that is being spent. And this is why we're going through this. This is why we have to take this methodical, type of journey to get us to the destination that we need to get to, because we don't want to spend money that we don't need to spend, and we want to be accountable, and we want to have transparency for that money. So going forward, I want to just make it real clear that when I first got on city council, my whole premise was because I wanted to try to help straighten and right the ship and put as much money towards MERS as I possibly could. So for purposes of raising PA 33, it was always done with the intent that I wanted to put as much extra money into the MERS as we possibly could. Obviously, we need to have some sort of day-to-day improvements because we have a lot of dilapidated type things like our parks. I would have liked to discuss that today, not because I want to spend the money, but because I think there's issues with the proposals that were given to us that I think we should have been able to go through and kind of weed out a little bit more. So that way the individuals or the companies who have brought us those proposals could go back and get us some more information about certain things. That didn't happen, that's okay. We'll get there for sure. Obviously there's a lot up in the air for COVID-19. But I want the residents to know that, I think for myself, I'm not looking at a huge tax increase this time. I want to make sure that they understand that we don't know what this is going to be. We don't know how long this is going to be. And really, I really want to just try to keep it as less as possible, which is why we have to find out exactly how much money is in that fund balance. And we need to find out exactly what that budget means and what that means in terms of the projections for the things such as like the state revenue sharing, which may not be as much as it has been in years. So those are the things you're going to hear about in the upcoming months, because we need to make sure we know exactly what's there, because obviously you've had 9 mills for 2 years. We've put extra money in MERS. Now that with the market slide, that doesn't help. So it may not be beneficial this year to have a huge tax increase to try to put extra money since the market isn't doing well. Obviously we need that. We need the market to do well so that we get a better rate of return. So that being said, at least for me, I'm going to be looking at if we have to increase mills, it's the minimum amount that we necessarily have to increase, if anything at all. So that's why I want to a penny what it is that's in there, because we've been through a lot and we've really kind of we got the ship where it needs to be, but we've got some issues we've still got to work through. And I think getting an independent HR company will help us in terms of being able to move us forward in that respect. And please take this COVID-19 seriously. I know it's hard. Believe me, I know it's hard. But please take it seriously so we can all get back at it. We can all get back to being together. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Olin, did you have anything you'd like to?
No, but that's very kind of you to ask.
Okay, Michelle. Okay, no, I got it. Let me go. I have to do my stuff. Okay. All right, I'm going to update some of the residents and some of the information that is happening in the field and with our department. First, I just wanted to thank everybody who's helping with the COVID-19, including all our first responders and healthcare workers who are providing treatment. I know a lot of people have family like I do. I have a son-in-law who's a doctor in ICU working and a police sergeant on the front lines. So every day is a challenge for them. And then also thank all the grocery store workers and everything that keep those stores open to keep supplying us food. And even though Fraser's a small town, COVID didn't look at us as a small town. As of today, we have 52 confirmed cases in Fraser. That's 52 in a small town. So please, at first, as I think I said last meeting, 4 weeks ago that people were not taking it serious, and that was a serious problem. People were not listening. And once it started hit home for a lot of people, we could see the difference it's making. And then here's some of the bullet points from our public safety department and what we've been doing in the field. We're not sending two paramedics on non-priority calls. This way, we're keeping those paramedics healthy and keeping them safe when only one is needed at a time. Normally, we send two, but during this stage, we're only going with one unless it's a high priority call. All our medics are wearing Tyvek suits and coveralls on each call. So every call, they come back to the station and take it off and they get washed. Sometimes they're actually, some of them are throwaway jumpsuits. If they actually come in contact or one of the calls is directly with COVID, they will throw away that material. We've received many donations from residents and businesses, such items as booties, hair covers, thermometers, face shields, and N95 masks, etc. Some of the new policies is we're screening all the employees prior to entry. I came in a few times during the week and they weren't going to let me in if I didn't pass the screening process. Cleaning policies, all the buildings, vehicles, clothing, and personnel are constantly being monitored and cleaned. And decontamination policies we have put in place. The city has new hand sanitizer pumps mounted on the walls at the stations and entry points. And we opened up our hazmat trailer and brought it to the city, and currently using some of the equipment out of that hazmat trailer. We purchased a decontamination cleaning device that we're using inside of City Hall. And it's something that they actually use in the high schools and doctors' offices and medical facilities. And opened dialogue with Fraser Villa. Fraser Villa is our most vulnerable business housing and our most vulnerable residents. We have provided them with some masks and assist them curbing the spread of corona at the facility. We had a few runs there and found out they were almost had nothing on hand to protect from COVID. So our department actually gave them some of our supplies, and then we hooked them up with how to get some other supplies that they needed for their staffs. And by the way, Fraser is, we're doing very, very well on our supplies at this time. We have scheduled conference calls with Fraser Villa to check their status and needs weekly. Daily and weekly conference calls with Macomb County Fire Chiefs, Police Chiefs, and Emergency Management Liaisons. I know that the director and Jason Poole and Lieutenant Bisbee are on these calls all the time. I was here for a couple of them and watched them, and everybody's talking and doing what they can. We've assigned logistics and procurement officer to this to make sure that we always have the proper supplies and a good inventory of them. And we also assigned 3 public safety officers who are EMTs to the fire hall, doing 24-hour shifts to limit the amount of employees to exposure. We're still handling all the police and fire calls, and some residents are required to come to the station or come out of their home and take a report over the phone as needed. As of Friday, the city has no coronavirus employees that are contaminated, and all off work duty has been suspended. So again, residents, please monitor. We'll keep everyone informed as much as you can. Please listen to the guidelines. They're changing all the time. The governor just issued it to the end of April, and hopefully we can maybe start getting some things back to normal in the next month or two. So we'll see. That's all I have on that. I hope everyone has a great holiday weekend, Good Friday, and a happy Easter. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you feel free to contact the council people or myself. We're here to serve you, and I think we all have extra time on our hands right now to help out if we can help out. So at this, I would like to open it up for citizen participation. And Michelle is going to check the waiting room and see if anyone from the audience would like to make any comments.
Anybody that wants to talk, please raise your hand.
Anybody? Going once. Going twice. Going.
I see nobody with their hands raised. I do want to apologize for the YouTube not working. Somebody borrowed my laptop at 6:59 that sends the encoding out for the YouTube. So apparently if there's nothing to send it out there, then you can't broadcast it. Okay, I think we have no citizen participation.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Well, at this time, I need a motion to,
I'll make a
close the
motion.
meeting.
I'll make a
We
motion.
have a motion, do we have a support?
Support.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Everybody? Motion carries. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Yes.
everyone. Be safe. Thank you, residents.